I see.
And I was just like,
So, can you tell me what's the difference? What about peace advocates or peace activists? Okay, thank you. What's that? You know what?
Finally here.
At lunch. Under my client's feet. Of course it's important. What you allow.
so I was just like, what?
Look, I can understand how you would want to be in a status. You understand there's certain things that are status. Has to be something. There's no. You can advertise all the time. You can Google jobs, activist jobs. Jobs. And it's that's the type of book I did. I had. I did it 14 years ago on my 60th birthday. And I didn't even feel I needed a voice. It turned into a thing that I did very late. It was denied initially on my birthday. And a big party. I handed to everybody. And well, it was. My name was on the ballot. It was proven a couple years later. It was always on the ballot. My name is no job description. So the argument was, are you going to run that? Jerry Bruce did nothing. He said, I was on the board. That's what I said. That's not allowed. You're right. The biggest in the world. My name in an unusual way, Your Honor, please. Way to get the word peace activist on the ballot. So I said, well, Your Honor, first of all, I can't imagine you reading that article wouldn't influence you in some way about this case. John Square, I could have. And I said, but I don't know if I'm going to run again. That's not the reason I did it. The reason I did it was the birthday gift to myself. So remind me on the actively promote peace. And the divorce. Why did I say that? He said, well, first I remember him. He said, you know, people here on this side of the line. Some of the guys here were, his name was Grow Up, Wake and Make Peace. That was Thacker. He said, but he didn't come to me requesting a change. I said, but Your Honor, if he did, would you have been the one to deny it? I was doing good. Then he says, you know, I just want to know, what if you came before
whether they could do it legally or they want to do it with the consequences. I don't know, but it was unfair. So he said, well, you can do it today.
No,
I said, well,
this is all my phone.
okay, thank you. So I went to the party.
Yeah, this is my phone. It's a 6 by 7 large phone.
We got a call in 2 days that we ran.
I got it for 400.
I knew that I had very short.
On my trip.
So we had 300.
On my trip. On my trip.
Your
I'll be on the swimming circuit.
legal notice. Takes long to write.
Oh, nice.
And I wish.
I like this one. I like this one. I'm trying to get everything that can like a bunch of things in my honor. I'm treating myself like 16 now.
Cost you the election right there. I wouldn't advise that. Advise you. I'd say, then you would win. Okay.
Oh my God, they spelled John's name wrong.
When?
On his
You're
letter.
right. Oh my God.
Yeah.
They, were you at the Martin Luther King?
Yeah.
They spelled the guy that,
It's just like, there's people like that that actually like care about.
John Carlos. Found that. John Carlos. So you found this. Hold on.
Well,
Also like all this stuff is like,
maybe because they remade it as vice president.
you know, a lot of things growing right now. It sounds like you have like a lot of stuff.
This could be rearranged.
I haven't.
Oh, you do?
So anything more exciting?
Let me know. Whatever you say. Like, I'm always down to like,
You know who discussers are?
I've always thought that it was.
Hey, Jerry. Spelled wrong. Jon. The first time he's going to see it. The first time. Good. See, I checked. So I don't have a
He might be video, because he's.
Well. Well, I mean, emotional.
Yeah, and then the clicker is just right there. It's like up right. So, yeah. You miss except I'm like old school with the PowerPoint. Prezi is now like Prezi, and it makes me Okay, good. Oh, see, that's why I didn't do it. I watched when all this these viewers weren't too bad. But some person I've seen, I'm like,
Yeah, like, but everyone's like my favorite, like when I went to sing and I was gonna do our PowerPoint for the kindergarten roundup last year, they were like,
but then like when we're making the
it's hard. Yeah. Okay, well then see, that's why I didn't do it.
yeah. Because you're like, I didn't want anyone to sit.
Notice it's Jerry, I'm calling from the school board, I'm just here, just checking in. Oh, it was great. I got a picture of this guy named Fred Harris. 50 years ago. Everything.
Everything.
Google and all these things. Yeah, at the library. Good speakers. How, oh yeah, I got the little. We should talk about God. You that's why the Sierra University. Of course, it's for the environment, safe environment. We can't be afraid to mention it. It's a big deal, though. I say we're all the same thing. Try to do a little bit of thing. But we'll meet next month all together. I'm just going to say hi. All right, I'll be home after the meeting. I don't know what time it's going to be. and a sandwich on my bread. Cream cheese and jelly.
He's a good guy to get it right.
It doesn't have to be toasted. It's already we could. Okay, no problem. Okay. Maybe you put it into a Word document and then you between everything that works. Okay.
I know there's a better way to do it, but
All right.
So the other Jerry Rubin died.
November 1994. Quite a while.
No.
Does anybody that knows about it?
No, it was 2 years ago.
November 14th, he was hit by a car at Wilshire South in J1.
We're talking about different Jerry. The Jerry Rubin was the executive producer. The one who ran KTL. Yeah, we're talking about different Jerry.
Right, yes. I remember I talked
Now
now
you're
for about a couple of minutes.
right.
Of course, you know John Grant.
Oh, no. He is back in the 90s. He is back.
He's one of my favorite guys, even though we disagree on certain things.
Grant?
It was the strangest thing. We wanted to be part of the parade, you know. He said, well, Mark, it was an engine, you know, there's nothing controversial. And he originally said, okay, it was like on the front page of the New York Times. Then he called me and said, we're getting seats from the veterans groups. That was too much heat, and they became hard. And then the press was interested. We were talking about it, and more about it, about how it came hard. So we decided to do a press conference right there off the Hollywood Boulevard at the private club and bring this scroll, which we wanted to do. We'll do something later. I will definitely do something.
It's fun stuff.
You know what I mean? So I called him up. I said, I heard you on the news. One of Greg's events, and you're going to put it
That's great.
proclamation.
That's great.
And a truck there. He said, we're going to proclaim October 9th every year, John Lennon Day in Hollywood.
That's true.
Listen, one more story.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
That's why we were trying to get started. Many have been trying to do them all. You know, John Lennon starred 1988. Yoko was there. Locked off. The whole street was great. It used to be on the other end.
They moved it.
They moved it, yeah. So it was up there for many years. 70-year lobby star. And the Beatles. Front there, all together. Front or next to somewhere. And the Beatles started, it was already made up. And then John saw it. He said, we can't do it. Some of the Beatles has to be there. Beatles. He said, I know what we have is. So, here's it. I'd always joke, yeah.
Oh, look, they put up the different, they put up board member instead of board president.
That's right, they had, rather than miss
They excise the age.
they don't want to explain that. What? Pretty strange. When they already had one as an example.
Hi, Sarah. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
It's pretty embarrassing they didn't.
Sorry, you couldn't talk.
No, I'm a reporter.
What do you think?
Oh, I think they're going to severely self-investigate and then tell self, don't memo to self, don't do this ever again. And they'll have a class to teach themselves not to do this.
You're talking about conflict.
Yeah. Contracts that benefit. Yeah, but what it indicates is a reckless facilities. For her to vote on a consent agenda, they've already got 7 votes yes for it anyway. All she had to do was recuse herself on it. 16 of them. It's a stupid error. It's a stupid error. That's what it is. Does it deserve a pound of flesh? No one's saying. No one's saying. You don't know what I do.
Absolutely. Well, I like this person.
I have nothing against Maria whatsoever. Except she's part of this self-perpetuating machine. No organization, no matter who they are, should appoint a school board member who lost an election to a vacancy. Sorry, you just don't do that. Twice. You don't do that. You don't ignore the bill. There is just in a moment. You don't do that. But that's what happens.
Maria, hi.
Then this is a good way.
Put together policies in place that'll go. Imagine help in some way that they bring it on. Make it easier. Avoid that. I'd love to see
Something tells me you prefer the.
Let's go right to the side.
Testing.
Item, and then after that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District.
Oops. Wait for the red light.
He gave me a thumbs up. I did ask.
You're fine. I'm still interested.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Santa Monica Malibu Board of Education meeting for January 18th. Happy New Year to all of you. On behalf of the entire board, we apologize for our delay in making it to open session. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:35. Is that correct, Sarah? 6:37. Let the record show, please, that all members of the Board of Education are in attendance. Thank you for that. And I'd like to ask Sarah Braff to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you, Sarah. The board has 3 items to report out from our closed session. The first is a settlement agreement identified as DN1009 for the 2017-18 academic year. The summary of that agreement is as follows. The district shall pay reasonable and compensable attorney's fees in the amount of $30,000. That was a 7-0 vote of our board. The next item is a settlement agreement identified as DN1010 for 2017-18. The summary of that agreement is as follows. As compensatory education only and not subject to stay put or part of any IEP, the district agrees to reimburse parents for students' private educational support services provided by the McKenna Learning Center up to a total of $47,500, broken down as follows. One, $1,000 for the 2015-16 school year. 2, $1,000 for the 2015 extended school year. 3, $22,000 for the 2016-17 school year. And 4, $23,500 for the 2017-18 school year and extended school year. Conditions for reimbursement include parent maintaining signed release of information permitting district open and unfettered verbal and written communication with MLC, district being permitted 3 90-minute observations of student during school hours at MLC,
the parties understand and agree that MLC is a separate entity responsible for its own actions. The district shall pay reasonable and compensable attorney's fees in the amount of $10,000. That was a unanimous decision of our Board of Education. The last item to report out of closed session is a settlement agreement as well, identified as DN 1011 for 2017-18. The summary of that agreement is as follows. The district shall pay reasonable and compensable attorney's fees in the amount of $10,000. That too was a unanimous decision of the Board of Education. That now brings us to the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Member Foster, seconded by Member Lieberman. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda? Again, that's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much. We have a timed stamped item that brings us to, well, of course, it was stamped for 6 p.m. We are late. We also have a time stamped item at 6:45 p.m. this evening. Our goal in consultation with the superintendent and the vice president is that we'll begin our 6 o'clock time stamp now, and we'll run 45 minutes and then move to our 6:45 time stamped item. Before we move to this item, I have a statement that I'd like to read on behalf of the board, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Drotti, who will introduce the speakers on this matter. And we do have one public comment, certainly, and we'll take that public comment after the presentation. Serious concerns have been raised regarding potential conflict of interest involving a board member. As guardians of the public trust, we recognize the importance of acting openly, honestly, and within our ethical and legal obligations as elected school board members. As such, we have taken this matter seriously with the due diligence that it deserves. We immediately engaged the superintendent, who directed that our legal counsel conduct an investigation into the allegations, provide a factual summary of what was learned, and provide recommendations to avoid similar issues in the future. While we were looking into the conduct, our primary concern was forward-looking with an eye toward best practices as opposed to reaching a determination whether a conflict of interest exists. While we have no information that there is an ongoing active investigation, conflict of interest allegations are routinely investigated by the District Attorney's Office and the FPPC, the Fair Political Practices Commission. As a board, we are also taking the almost unprecedented step of having our legal counsel provide information from an internal investigation in open session tonight. Please be advised that Mr. Howard Freeman, our counsel, will not be discussing legal opinions in public. The investigation or the communications or advice that Mr. Friedman or the district's law firm has provided the board. We are looking forward to Mr. Friedman's discussing his findings, best practices, and recommendations. While board members may have opinions, even strong opinions, regarding the findings and whether the found conduct should result in action by this board, I would caution us to wait until such time that a legal determination has been made by the FPPC or the District Attorney's Office or a court whether in fact any board member has engaged in unlawful or actionable conduct. Dr. Drotti.
Thank you. I think President Terwilder Chessman gave a great overview of what I was going to say. So the only additional thing is this is something that we committed to do several meetings ago, was to hire our counsel to investigate those matters that were brought forward. So like I said, like Mr. Terwilder Chessman said, our goal is to help us as an organization get better and to look forward toward improving and to ensure that these matters don't occur, whether it's perceived or actual, do not occur in the future. So with that said, I'm going to invite our legal counsel to come and present the findings from the internal investigation.
Everybody here okay? We on? Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Howard Friedman of Fagan, Friedman, and Full Frost, and I'm here with my colleague Jay Furno to present some factual findings resulting from our investigation, maybe a strong word, but our review of circumstances that have been brought to the district's attention and in turn to our attention. We were charged to look into the underlying facts and advise on best practices. I want to make sure that we give a caveat to everybody. We're not a legally authorized investigatory body, so we had no formal authority, for example, subpoena power to compel people or documents that might be relevant to our inquiry. So we were able to at least talk to a number of people who are witnesses or the subject of the investigation, review district documents, and our factual findings are based on that. It's quite likely that an agency such as the District Attorney's Office or the Fair Political Practices Commission, the FPPC, would be able to do a more comprehensive investigation because they have those legal powers that I described previously, again, mainly the power to subpoena both people and documents. We have provided a letter in interest of full disclosure to the public. We have provided a attorney-client privileged letter to the district that contains the analysis and legal analysis of some of the facts and our tentative conclusions. But this is a summary that addresses specifically the underlying facts. I'll try not to make it a law review course, but the conflict of interest laws, and then some recommendations in terms of best practices. So if I might start, and I would offer this, I think this is kind of somewhat unique in my experience because I've practiced law representing school districts and community college districts for over 40 years. And this is really the first time that I've seen a Board of Education move forward with a discussion for the public's benefit of what the underlying facts are and what the conflict of interest law is. So kudos to the district, to the board for taking this kind of measure. So first of all, I want to start the discussion with hopefully what I hope is for everybody's benefit is a brief overview of conflict of interest laws. In California, conflict of interest laws are addressed through several different statutes and several different statutory proceedings. First of all, the main one is Government Code Section 1090 et sec, or 1090 and following. And Section 1090 is the main, Government Code Section 1090 is the main statute that people, government officials, both employees and elected officials, look to for guidance. And it bars public officials, both elected and employees, from financial interests in any contract made by them in their official capacity or by any body of which they are a member, in other words, elected officials. So in an instance where there is a conflict of interest under Section 1090, not only is the individual affected unable to participate in the development of a contract or approval of a contract, but the body on which they sit cannot even approve the contract. The apparent concern of the legislature being that somehow that individual may be able to affect the outcome without appearing to do so. So that's the main statute, Government Code Section 1090. There are some other statutes that address conflict of interest, and principally the Fair Political Practices Act comes into play. That appears in the Government Code at 81,000 and following, excuse me, the Political Reform Act administered by the Fair Political Practices Commission, or the FPPC. That similarly, not identically, but similarly prohibits making or participating in any way to influence a government decision in which an official knows or has reason to know that she or he has a financial interest. So very similar, but not the prohibition on the body taking action, but specifically a prohibition on the individual participating or voting on a decision. And keep in mind, both of those bodies of statutes not only prohibit voting on the action that's involved, but participating in any way, in meetings, discussions, conversations, whether public or private, on this. A third main body of law is what we call the common law. The common law is not a statute. It's not something enacted by the legislature, but it's law that's developed over decades and decades and decades via court decision. So the common law is non-statutory, and it bars placing oneself in a position in which personal interests may come into conflict with duties to the public. So unlike the other two statutes I talked about, this transcends financial interests. This can be some sort of non-economic personal interest. The example I always give, and it comes from a reported appellate court decision here in California, but a member of a city council who is a renter in a building near the beach, someone's applying for some sort of permit or exception to permit to build some sort of larger structure that would block view to the ocean, and this particular city council person was prevented from participating in the decision because although they don't have a financial interest, there's some sort of competing interest. And the interest of a elected official should always be to do the public good, and to the extent you ever run into a circumstance where you feel there's any conflict or potential conflict, there's an obligation to refrain from participation. Okay, that brings us to the factual circumstances. So the allegations, and I would characterize perhaps some as rumors that came to our attention, resulted in actually several different factual vignettes that I'll describe. The first one involves contractors that the district approved who had as a consultant Vasquez and Associates. That's Ms. Leon Vasquez's husband, as I understand it, who owns this consulting company. And keeping in mind, with all the board members we talk about, it's important to remember, amongst other things, when they begin on the board. So my understanding is that Ms. Leon Vasquez began on the board, or started on the board in the year 2000. In the annual statement of economic interest that board members file annually, she has noted her husband's business in the years 2003 through 2008. That has been noted in the statement of economic interest since then. But his company, his consulting firm, had contracts with two entities that ultimately received district contracts approved by the board, including approval votes by Ms. Leon Vasquez. One of the companies is Kegent. And by the way, as I talk about these two companies, everyone should note their work for the district has been completed at this point. So they're not ongoing activities insofar as we know. Kegent is a financial advisor type of firm, and it's been the subject of 4 board consent calendar approvals between February 2009 and May 2017. It's important to note also that in the actions, essentially the first and last actions, four board consent calendar approvals between February 2009 and May 2017. The first board approval and the last board approval were of contracts that actually had language acknowledging Vasquez and Associates as a consultant to the respect to Kegent, but offered that the company was not retained to provide services in connection with the district. So there was a red flag there that, that as far as we know, actually nobody actually noticed for further discussion. So Kegent has proceeded to do work which, as far as we know, has been positive, good work, on the district's general obligation bond, on a joint use agreement with the city, on a project called Recovery Max that involved review, I think, of district insurance programs, medical, dental, vision, and they've again completed, as far as we know, work on those projects. The second company is acronym TELACU, T-E-L-A-C-U, which is a nonprofit that does multiple services, including construction management, which is what the activity was they engaged in with the district. Construction management contracts with Teleco were approved on the consent calendar on 5 occasions in 2017. The first was a master contract, which involved the retention of Teleco and several other construction management companies, and then 4 specific work contracts, all on consent calendar. Ms. Leon Vasquez voted approval on each of those occasions. And for the public who doesn't understand consent calendar is a list of various actions which are anticipated to be non-controversial, so they're lumped together and voted on by the board and as a whole, versus individual calendar items that the board considers. So in the case of both Keyent and Teleco, again, we're not giving legal advice here in the public to everybody. Our client is the Board of Education, and again, we have provided a letter to the Board of Education that's protected by attorney-client privilege. But it is worth referencing it in terms of best practices. When there's a determination of a financial interest, any action by the board may be barred under Section 1090, and at least, at minimum, the affected board members should announce their potential conflict and then abstain from voting. The next series of circumstances arise from Mr. Metcher's work as a licensed architect. Mr. Metcher was appointed by board action in August 2007, and then after approximately a month out of office was reappointed again in January 2015. In the course of his work as an architect for a variety of entities and individuals, Mr. Metcher had occasion to do work for individuals and entities that have some relationship to the district. So we made sure we tried to vet those circumstances under which work was done for individuals and entities that had any kind of contact or ultimate relationship with the district. So the first was work that was done by Mr. Metcher under contract with the Vasquezes on their home. This work was done during the period of 2001 to 2003. Now, again, recall I've indicated Mr. Metcher was appointed to the board in August of 2007, and then after approximately a month out of office, was reappointed in January 2015. So the work on the Vasquez home was during the period 2001 to 2003, so approximately 4 years before he was appointed to the board. And Ms. Leon Vasquez voted for him. And I want to make sure everyone understands, as I cover these particular circumstances, this is no finding of conflict of interest. These are just circumstances we looked into to make sure that there was or was not a conflict of interest. Second circumstance was a contract for architectural services, a contract that was with the Woodcraft Rangers and Pico Neighborhood Youth and Family Center. This was a contract for work that was done in 2001, with payment being made at the very beginning of January 2002. Again, keeping in mind Mr. Metcher began his term of office in August of 2007. At the time of that contract, back in 2001, Mr. De La Torre, Oscar De La Torre, was an employee of the Woodcraft Rangers. He was not a board member until he was elected in November of 2002. He did, after being elected to the board in November 2002, vote for the Metcher appointments to the Board of Education that occurred in 2007 and 2015. But keep in mind that the work that Mr. Metcher did for the Woodcraft Rangers in 2001 was some 6 years before his appointment to the Board of Education. and at least almost a year before Mr. De La Torre's appointment, or election rather, to the Board of Education. The next architectural work that presents an issue is work that Mr. Metcher did for Unite Here Local 11. Unite Here Local 11 is a union involved, at least in part, in the hospitality industry. And the work was done during a period of time from 2002 to 2011, I believe, on administrative offices of Unite Here, if I'm not mistaken. The only connection Unite Here has is that it was mentioned in a June 2017 board action on a long-term lease extension for the Doubletree property. I'm not from this community, but I think most people know the Doubletree Hotel, and it's on district property, has been the subject of a long-term lease and a lease extension, actually. The board took action in 2009 to require, as board policy 3432 was adopted, requiring labor peace agreements on leases for hospitality operations on district property. This was for the purpose of assuring economic certainty of revenue by the terms of the board policy itself. But there was no reference to any particular labor group or union at that time. As I mentioned before, it was not until June of 2017 that the board acted on a long-term lease extension for the Doubletree, and it included a labor peace agreement negotiated by the Doubletree leaseholder with United Here. Mr. Metcher did vote for the lease extension, but was not a party to the leaseholder's negotiation of any agreement with a union, much less with Unite Here. And that approval of the board action in June of 2017 was about some 6 years after the last work he had done for Unite Here. Lastly, there was district architectural work that Mr. Metcher performed under approvals from the board, and that was work that he did during the period of 2003 to 2006. Four different purchase orders were approved by the board during that period of time, and Ms. Leon Vasquez voted for those purchase orders apparently shortly after the completion of work on her home by Mr. Metcher as an architect. So those were the architect situations or circumstances that we looked at, and so we come to the point of making recommendations. The recommendations that we have are probably no surprise to anybody, but given some of the problems arising from at least some of the circumstances that I described, we recommend that there be a better, and I understand from conversations that some of these things are already in the works or already being done, but there be improved internal communication by and with board members and affected employees as well, keeping in mind, although we're focusing on board members this evening, the conflict of interest laws can affect employees as well, decision makers who, for example, are bringing forward contracts to the board. Their decision is subject to conflict of interest analysis. And so we urge better internal communication and better issue spotting by staff and board members. I described one circumstance where Keegan in its contract, or at least a couple of its contracts, specifically mentioned consulting work that was being done by Vasquez and Associates, and had, probably at several different levels, had someone been aware of that provision or been aware of the circumstances, there could have been some planning ahead of time and some addressing of the particular issue that arises or arose. We also recommend there be review of relevant policies and procedures Board Bylaw 9270 specifically addresses conflict of interest, and it's worth taking a look and seeing if there are some improvements that can be made there. As well as the district's conflict of interest code. The conflict of interest code is required of every public entity in California, and is on file with the County Board of Supervisors and approved by the County Board of Supervisors. And that might be worth another look to see if some sort of amendment or changes might be merited there. And then lastly, as always, training. Perhaps, and I don't know this for a fact, but perhaps over time we lose sight of certain things and don't prioritize. And circumstances like this result in kind of a renewed vigor in trying to prioritize and address these things. And certainly training of those, minimally of those individuals, not only board members, but as I said, senior staff who are involved in the decision-making and recommendations for board action on various contracts, would probably would benefit greatly from some sort of training program offered through one of the professional organizations in California or by legal counsel, whatever the board deems appropriate or what staff deems appropriate. So that's kind of the conclusion of my summary. If there are some specific questions, again, my intention is not to, since it's not my privilege to waive, I don't plan to say anything that would waive attorney-client privilege, and if some questions arise that are in that vein, I'll point that out. But otherwise, are there questions from the board?
Mr. Friedman, we'll allow for clarifying questions first from your report, and then we have several speakers of the public who would like to address this. And then I also understand that you have, that Dr. Drotti has a handout of the summary that will be made available to the public as well. Are there clarifying questions from members of the board? Seeing none, Vice President Keene, can you take us to public comments, please? Lori.
Can I just ask a question that you clarify for people here who are here for a 6:45 time-stamped item, and it's now 7:06, and I don't know how we're going to handle that, but I know that since I recognize them, there are a number of people here from staff and from the public for that item. So I had announced as we started that I was hoping we'd be able to hold to the 45 minutes for this conversation, which would take us to 7:30, and then with grand apology to those who are here for early childhood education, hopefully we'll be with you at 7:30 this evening. And again, we ask your forgiveness for our delay. Is that okay, Lori? Okay, and if we need to go longer, we have to just recognize we might need to go back to this. Yes, of course. Of course. Thank you.
The Board of Education will now hear comments from the public regarding this specific agenda item. As per the Brown Act, board members may not engage in discussion of issues raised during public comments except to ask clarifying questions, make a brief announcement, make a brief report on his or her own activities, or to refer the matter to staff. Speakers who have submitted a public speaking card prior to the beginning of this item will have 3 minutes to speak. Speakers who submit a public speaking card after this item begins shall be limited to 1 minute. Speakers and members of the audience are asked to refrain from expressions of support or disagreement that would intimidate other speakers or disrupt the meeting. We have 2 speakers. First will be Jerry Rubin. Second will be Kevin Schenkman.
Thank you very, very much. Jerry Rubin, Santa Monica resident, Superintendent Drotti, Board President Jeswine, board members. Well, I wanted to be here tonight. Like many of us, I read some articles in the press, but I just felt a real obligation to speak in support of the individuals who I've known for decades, and speak in support of their absolute dedication to the school district and to the community of Santa Monica for years and years and years. Maria Leon Vasquez, what is it, 17 years now, serving the school board and our students. Ralph Metcher, my goodness, Oscar Della Torre, his dedication to peace and the youth of Santa Monica. When I read these articles, I thought, it's great. Sure, conflict of interest is a serious issue, and I'm glad the board and the district is taking it seriously. But I like those words, looking to the future. I like those words, training. Could all use it. There's got to be some way. Those consent calendars are so confusing. When I see them, I can't understand them after I'm looking at them for a half hour, even at the city council meetings. So maybe there's some way to graphically do something with the consent calendars as well. But I just wanted to say that this is a good, dedicated board, and you're all doing a great job, and there's issues that have to be attended to, so let's move to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Mr. Schenkman, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Before we're all patting each other on the back for actually doing an investigation, I'm actually struck by what wasn't said and what wasn't investigated, what wasn't done as part of the investigation. You know, this investigation arose out of an article by 2 reporters in the Los Angeles Times. I'm informed that they were not contacted as part of the investigation. A parent, myself, namely, was mentioned in the article. I was not contacted by the investigators. And in fact, Mr. Furno, Mr. Friedman, I know several of the attorneys in your firm. Mr. Fagan, Mr. Salt, Mr. Foster. You know where to reach me. I'd be happy to tell you, to discuss this with you. And in fact, there's plenty that maybe you don't even know about, but we do. And then I'm disturbed by the fact that at the same time as we're talking about transparency, the board apparently has a report that it is asserting attorney-client privilege over. So we get some piece of an investigation as the public, but we don't get the whole thing. That's not transparency. I asked the board to waive the attorney-client privilege and release the report. And Mr. Friedman, Mr. Furno, I'd be happy to talk to you because there's plenty more about a couple of the folks up on that dais that was not mentioned in your report. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more public comments.
Thank you, Vice President Keene. That'll now bring us to the discussion of this item. Member Foster.
So I have to start by saying I watch a lot of MSNBC. And I spend a lot of time, and I think you're going to say don't we all too, I spend a lot of time yelling at the television while I'm watching it. It's a frustrating world we live in, a world where we see presumably good people, elected officials, looking the other way on sometimes unconscionably horrible behavior and sometimes stupid and thoughtless, but nevertheless unacceptable behavior. And I'm reading a book that came out of the Duty to Warn conference at Yale, and there's a phrase that struck me in that book. It's called malignant normality, and it's apparently a psychological concept that applies to some truly horrendous situations, but also applies more generally to places where things that were previously unacceptable become unacceptable because they're seen to be in common practice. We apparently don't have police power as a school board, and there's discussion of FPPC and their ability to investigate in the district attorney's office that has the ability to investigate. My concern is, as it so often is in these situations, we set an example for the kids, certainly, that we're responsible for. We set an example for the community and how our elected officials and how our government bodies do business. And we have a reputation that's terribly, terribly important. Our communities have given us millions of dollars a year in tax support. They've given us hundreds of millions of dollars in bond support, and that is based on a trust that we're trustworthy. And there's what is needed is to follow this through to a conclusion and to conclude it so that there is no wondering, there is no concern, there is no doubt about what a closed session report would say or what the facts are, or ultimately the culpability. And I say that both for the possibility that some people have been put under scrutiny that would ultimately be cleared if there was an investigation taken to its end, and others might not. I also know that there are indisputable facts that in one particular case, Maria Leon Vasquez points to a clear set of facts that involve voting on things for which her family had a financial interest. I don't know how to explain that to people, and one of the things I find, I talk to people about school board stuff all the time, and I can watch their eyes rolling back in their head as I talk to them about it by and large. This goes to the bone. People come to me and say, what is up with that? They come to me and say, how can that be? With also kind of an angry, almost expectation that that's what government is, but why aren't we doing anything about it? And I don't have a great answer for them until we get to the bottom of this. So what I'm left with in this moment is two things. Three things. One is that I hope that our friends at FPPC and the district attorney take an interest in this matter so that we can know. Two, I think with the pattern of facts we have, I would suggest to Maria, who's been on the board 18 years, that this would be a good time to retire. Third, this is not going to sit comfortably, and I don't know where it goes from here. But as I sit here and as I watch the things that are taking place elsewhere in the world, we cannot abide this in our own community. We can't sit by and say, oh, we'll lock the door. I mean, Jerry, I love you. You're wonderful. 17 years on the school board, you know how to read the consent calendar. That's our job. It's negligence as a board member not to read the darn calendar. And when your family is paid by people on that calendar, you have an exponentially larger responsibility. It's not complicated. We do not deserve that pass of, oh gee, the consent calendar is complicated. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Member Foster. Member Lieberman? I see you reaching for the button. I'm not presuming.
I didn't raise my hand, but I guess I'm only going to start by addressing what I think is a bit of hyperbole, I think, Craig. I think we all, as Richard said eloquently, take this very seriously. I think Ben has taken this seriously from the very beginning. I think we all have to hold ourselves to a high standard with respect to conflict of interest, because that's how we preserve the integrity of the school district. I totally agree with you in that regard. But to compare or to imply that taking lessons from this and trying to look forward to prevent this kind of thing from happening again is akin to what the Republicans are doing with Donald Trump, and turning a blind eye is just patently ridiculous. And I resent that, and I think that to make those kind of comparisons contributes to what I think is a distrust of government at all levels and in all places, and some of it is earned and some of it is not. And I think to sort of succumb to generalizations like that are not healthy for our district or for government generally if you believe in it. So I just have to react to that first. I also agree that we set examples for our kids, and one of the things I think we do is one of the things we want out of our kids is for them to learn to obtain all the facts, to look at things critically, to understand situations, to see when mistakes can be made and when they can and cannot be forgiven, and in fact, restorative justice is premised on that kind of an approach. It's not an automatic, everything is on the same level and has the same level of intent. And so I hope that we teach our kids to look deeply into what's behind anything that seems out of place or questionable. I guess I really, and I guess I feel that I'm not defending what appear to have been mistakes, and I'm not Maria's or Ralph's or Oscar's lawyers, but I actually have to say I agree with what Jerry said, and I think that needs to be a starting point, because it is a starting point. People up here attend meetings week after week, month after month, year after year, and have done a tremendous amount, and it's documentable. And so before you kind of ask them to resign over allegations about which we have a very limited amount of knowledge and evidence, I really think you have to be more careful and discreet. I mean, we have not, and I have to say this to the public, again, I'm nobody's lawyer here, although I have legal training, and I am a lawyer by training. People, we don't, as Howard Friedman said, our attorneys didn't have subpoena power. They don't have any information. From the information that he has repeated to us, there's no indication that anyone did anything intentional or that there's any financial interest that's been indicated. The appearance is the only legal standard that I think is obviously comes into play here. And I don't think any of us want to take actions. I don't think anyone here, any of the 7 of us, would knowingly take an action as to which we had a conflict of interest. But we do see, it's not about not knowing how to read a consent agenda or an agenda. We have long agendas. They have a lot of things on them. Every board member has certain times where they may miss a name or whatever. The question is, I mean, if I thought that there was a deliberate intent or some financial interest at stake here, I'd be very concerned. And so, as you say, the FPPC or the DA's office, if they think there is something like that to look into, absolutely, that should be done. But something that has an appearance of impropriety that perhaps looking backward should have been seen and should have led to a recusal, I think we have to learn from those things. And I think we have to find mechanisms, which I would ask our staff and our legal counsel to suggest, for making it more clear what contracts we're about to look at, what entities we look at, because every single board meeting we do have long lists of organizations, groups we make payments to on purchase orders that we don't even know what the contracts are that underlie some of those, because they're not contracts we have directly ever seen or entered into. So I think that we have to rededicate ourselves to being as thorough and dedicated to carefully reading our own agendas, to pointing out to each other if we see anything that we think might cause a conflict, and with respect to this particular matter, I think several of us up here are aware that at least one board member knew and could have said something and decided not to do that. That's part of our duty too, as a group, to each other. I just feel like we're, to really try to channel Jerry Rubin, we're people up here, and people, I want to believe, are doing the best job they can here. And again, we have to do everything we can to earn the public's respect and the public's trust, and I totally agree with that. But I think any member of the public that knows what we look at all the time can understand where something might happen, where somebody misses something. And again, more importantly, the agencies that are charged with doing that are not us. And what we should be doing, I think, is taking the opportunity to say, hey, these kinds of occurrences should cause us to say, wait a minute, are we all doing the best we can to ensure that these things don't happen? I absolutely agree with that. But I think we should be looking for systems to help us do a better job of that, and each of us ought to be saying, yeah, this is a lesson to all of us, not just one or two or three of us. We have to look carefully at these items all the time, and I think we have to have some systems that might help us sometimes too, because I can say, with respect to one of the particulars, because I've reflected on this as I've looked back at agendas. For instance, the Keegent item that we all voted on last year contained the contract with Keegent that contained the paragraph about Vasquez and Associates. Either nobody up here saw that, even though we all had it in our packets, or when I went back and looked at it, to tell you the truth, I don't remember seeing it, but I noticed that Vasquez isn't spelled correctly, or it's not spelled the way Maria and Tony spell it. So I'm not even sure, since it's a common name, I would have even realized, because I had no idea that Tony Vasquez had any relationship to Keegent, so I'm not even sure I would have asked the question. But more importantly, I don't know that anybody can absorb every single detail that's in every single contract, and that was in a contract, not in the cover piece, that we all could say we missed. Because had I noticed it, I like to believe I would have said, hey, is there a problem here? So I could talk about this all night, but I feel like I am not in any way trying to say that we don't all collectively and individually take responsibility for votes we make here, and for looking at whether we have conflicts of interest, and for everything we do here. But to talk about anything that's been put out here as leading to malignant normality, which I am fearful we're heading towards in the larger world, I think it's really unfair and dangerous to go there here. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, Member Lieberman. Are there other members of the Board of Education who'd like to join this discussion? Member De La Torre.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I appreciate the report for clarifying some facts as related to the allegations made about the work that Ralph Metcher did with Woodcraft Rangers, where I served as a program manager back in 2001 when his services were contracted. I was not a member of the school board at that time, and we know from the facts that there's no conflict because I wasn't a member of the school board, and on top of that, the work that was done, I had no contractual authority over. I was just a program manager. I was not the executive director. The Pico Youth and Family Center did take over that building, and we left that building in 2008, but that building is not a building that I own or a family member owns, or, you know, we don't own any commercial property in the city of Santa Monica. So one of the things that I'm happy about is that at least we can clarify that, because it was right before Christmas to see my picture in the newspaper, in the LA Times, with those types of allegations, you know, you can imagine the talk at dinner, you know, and why am I in the newspaper, you know, and all that, and so it's hurtful to have that type of that type of issue happen, you know, around the holidays. But I understand, you know, it's I don't oppose anyone looking into an allegation, and that's what it is. It's an allegation, and I do agree that, you know, even this investigation has its limits. You know, we're not the district attorney's office. You know, there's limits to what this investigation can do, and then there's limits to what the school board can do. So I'm going to stay in my lane in terms of what we can do. But one of the things I want to say in regards to the work that Ralph did with Woodcraft Rangers at that time, I just want to characterize it at that time as nothing but positive for the community of the city of Santa Monica. And that Ralph at the time decided to work on this project, and and you know, I don't know exactly what his fees are, but I would say that it's a good thing if he gave a discount, but it was never intended in terms of quid pro quo or I'm going to do this if you give me this. I mean, I wasn't even thinking of running for the school board in 2001. And Ralph was probably not thinking about that I'd be in a position to appoint him in 2007, I believe, is when you were appointed first. So I just want to clarify that, and I think it's real important to say that what Ralph did and what I was working on at the time was a positive thing for this community. It led to the Pico Youth and Family Center that I am the executive director of now, and we've saved lives. We've made this community a safer place for many young people, and we continue to serve the youth of the community, even though all of our public funding has been stripped. You want to talk about conflict of interest? I mean, I don't even know what to call what happened to us and what's happening, you know, to us in terms of the punishment that we have received for advocacy, for speaking out. And I think that's the bigger problem that we have in our community, in our city, is that we're expected to go along, you know, we're expected to not question anything. We have a system, an election system that is unfair and that marginalizes people. And I think we can create a better system. Even the way that school board members, you know, we don't have staff. You know, we get paid like $350-something a month. It's a thankless job many times, and to deal with the type of allegations, accusations, political fights that happen, it's a very difficult thing to do. So I appreciate the service of anyone in any elected position, especially in our city, because people usually don't appreciate, you know, the hard work that goes into it. And I understand the feelings, you know, that people might be going through, you know, and out of, you know, I've known Maria and Tony for many years, and I appreciate, you know, their years of service to the community. And out of respect, you know, for her family and for her children, which I have a tremendous amount of admiration for, I'll reserve, you know, comments, even though there's been times, Maria, where you've publicly attacked me, and I have a perfect opportunity right now to say a lot of things. I will not do that, because I don't think it's the right thing to do. And really, out of respect, you know, for the years of service that you and your husband have given to this community and for your children, I will reserve my personal comments and would rather share what I think with you privately about what's happening. You know, my hope is that today we plant a seed for greater transparency and accountability, and we strive for a better form of representative democracy. I also feel that we must model leadership and accountability to the parents and to the students of our district. Any adult up here who has dealt with expulsions and suspensions, we understand the importance of taking responsibility and being accountable for the mistakes or lapse in judgment. And we hold our students accountable when they make mistakes, and I think that we should hold ourselves accountable as well. I think the bigger issue is we all have to take responsibility, and we all have to reflect on how we use our role and our power. Whenever we use our positions to put our personal profit before the needs of the people we represent, it can never produce anything good because it betrays the sanctity of the position we are given on loan by the residents and the voters. Power and position should be used to advance the public good, and that's what every elected official should aspire to do. I think, the process that's going on, I think with the district attorney's office or whatever else, it's something that we have to respect, because I think everybody has the right to let the facts speak and the investigation to move forward. But I think the last thing I want to say is that it does sadden me, because in the media or in other circles, people will assume a lot of things and say a lot of things and paint elected officials in a certain way. And all I can say is that I hope that we clarify whatever questions people might have, and that we stay focused on what we're all elected to do, which is to put the children, the students, the families, the teachers, the people that we represent, the key stakeholders in our community, as our priority.
Thank you, Member De La Torre. We are up against time, but I do want to let Member Metcher, if there are no objections, Mr. Metcher will be our last speaker. Not seeing anyone else wanting to speak here.
Just briefly, I want to thank Dr. Drotti for, and board leadership for recognizing that there's an issue that needs to be reviewed and taking appropriate actions to bring facts to light for the community to see. I want to thank Mr. De La Torre for his support of the work that we did together for youth in our community, that we continue to do. And I hope that we can all use this to help us have better practices, move forward and focus on the youth of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Metcher. Before I turn it over to Dr. Drotti, I just want to mirror back a few things, and particularly with what Mr. Friedman had shared with us, and so that the public knows clearly how we're going to be moving forward. This isn't the end of this discussion as to how we will improve our practices and to do a better job at maintaining, and sustaining the public's trust. So what we'll see in the weeks and months to come is a training of this board by way of Dr. Drotti leading us in those trainings, and with agents, or I should say consultants, that he chooses to bring in. We'll be reviewing our board policy and our administrative regulations that will be coming back to us before this board as well, and also looking at ways in which we can improve our internal communications of both employees and board members. And also, just so that the public is aware that no one here this evening on this board is trying to preclude any future conversations, discussions, or actions. But what we have heard is that we're looking to the agencies, the FPPC and the District Attorney's Office and the court to allow for due process. And we will do our internal improvements here and also await those decisions there. Dr. Drotti.
Thank you. Well, I know this was a difficult discussion item. I can imagine people that are sitting here how difficult it's been. I've been in these conversations the last 2 months, so no doubt that just based on some of the comments I've heard and stuff you hear out there in social media, the people will challenge this investigation. And I want to make sure the public, I'm clear when I say this. I stand by this, this investigation. I've learned a lot from this that I'm willing to commit to help help you guys better make some, so we don't make these mistakes. For those that want to challenge this, remember, in our government, we have checks and balances. We have checks and balances. we have gathered a lot of facts for those that want to challenge this, to take this and add anything else they think they have on the situation and go to the FPPC or the DA. That's the checks and balances there. They can go, and any public member can go out and say, I have a formal complaint against members of the board, or even me, based on my investigation, the investigation we conducted here, and go straight to FPPC or the DA. That is the checks and balances there. So with that said, I mean, I think we stand by this. I think we're going to take this information. I'm going to come up with several recommendations of things that we can improve on, and I think we need to get back to the business of improving our student learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Drotti. I'd also like to thank Mr. Friedman. Mr. Ferno, thank you very much for your assistance in this matter. And again, this will be something that we continue to address in the weeks and months to come. I also then want to say thank you again to our guests and folks who are presenting our study session tonight on the early learning pathway update. And I'm asking you'll allow us one other piece of small business before we get there, and that's the approval of the minutes. I thought perhaps we could take that quickly, and that's the approval of the minutes from our December 14th meeting.
I just have a quick question. So Sarah, with regard to, I don't have it handy and I don't want to take the time to look it up, the unification item, there were two pieces of paper, two things that I sent you that we all agreed would go into the minutes, but that's the long document, not the short document that we approve. So I just want to make sure that that's going to happen.
Yes, and I will double check that for you, that I did do that.
Okay, good. Is there, we don't see the big, thick, minutized agenda, right?
Oh, sorry.
That just comes out when it comes out. We see the
PDF
sort of
that's
digest.
attached to an agenda for you to approve minutes is like the Word version, where it's
Right.
really the votes
Right.
or requests for information from board. If you go to the district website and click on those agendas through CSBA, the minutes are there, so you'll see the full agenda with the votes and everything. So electronically on the CSBA website, it looks different than that attached Word
Even
doc.
before we approve it, the sort of, the to-be-approved thick minutes are available someplace? I'll talk to you offline.
Yeah, new software, I'm still learning all of it, but
Okay.
let me look into that.
I'll talk to you offline. So just so long as they're going to be included in the thick part, I'm good. I'll move approval.
Thank you, Member Foster. There's a moved by Member Foster, seconded by Member Metcher. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please. And those minutes are approved unanimously. And Dr. Drotti, we're on to the study session.
Yes. I would like to invite Dr. Susan Samars Powell to do the honor of presenting the work in early learning pathways.
The early learner in me wants us all to just stand up and stretch for a quick second, if you don't mind. I could do the popcorn, but I'm not going to make you do that. But if you just don't mind, wiggle those arms up. Everyone, up a second. Thank you. Little bit of air in the brains. We're back in. A little bit of movement. Thank you for indulging me. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. Good evening, Superintendent Drotti, Board President of Alder & Jessuin, board members, senior cabinet, and our public. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. My name is Susan Samars Powell, and I still get to say new. I'm starting my 6th month in this particular position, so I'll stop saying new after this. I'm the new Director of Early Learning for Santa Monica Malibu Unified, and it's an honor to be here tonight to share with you an update on our early learning pathway. Before I begin, we have a lot of people who've come to support us, and I just wanted to make sure I acknowledge them throughout this evening. First, I just want to thank Dr. Mora, who has stepped in her very short amount of time, has become a huge advocate of our early learning, and Dr. Irene Gonzalez Castillo, who's like doing everything for all of us to support us, has really helped me transition, and she's here to support us as well this evening. And we have a lot of our early learning members who are here with us. Iyao Ketagiri, who is our co-chair of our DAC and also co-chair of the Early Childhood Task Force, as well as Ben Sweat, who's a member of our DAC. And I saw Leila Taslimi, who also joined us, who's also co-chair of the Early Learning Task Force. And so I want to thank them for being here this evening with us. And I'll introduce our teachers as we go through this evening. So I will do my best to go through quickly because the teachers are the best part of this evening. So I'll make sure that I try and speak as quickly and efficiently as possible. But tonight I'm here just to share with you about all of the work that you have helped us do in the early learning movement. And tonight I want to thank you for the support you have given to us and for the support you will continue to give us, I know, as we move ourselves forward. I'm giving you up in front a very brief early learning movement history. And I know that many of you, and actually, as I've said to many in the audience could probably share far more than I could about the movement that's taken place, but that has led us to this wonderful location where we are right now. And I just want to briefly share that this comes from many areas. So the 2013 RAND report, which really shared that high quality early learning opportunities provide successful futures for children who are not only most in need, but most deserving. That we have, when we had that report, we also had many opportunities for many conversations to take place. And those conversations as a community took place with the development in our Early Childhood Task Force. And it is a wonderful community of learners who are there together simply as advocates for early learning, to really make sure that our children get what they deserve so that they are successful in their future. Thanks to the City of Santa Monica and the Learn and Thrive program, through Learn and Thrive, we had an offshoot with the Cradle to Career, which allowed us an opportunity to really focus and to show that this was an area of emphasis that we should be considering. We are excited. We'll be discussing the EDI in just a few moments, the early development instrument, but Santa Monica Malibu was one of the forerunners of this. And we continue to actually, they're calling us a mentor district because this is something we have used the data from the EDI to help us continue to learn about how we support our early learners. There was a transitional kindergarten movement that took place, which is something that we as a district have supported, and it's a reminder to us that we need to consider all ways in which we are helping our earliest of learners. Which also, as a result of multiple conversations, was that kindergarten readiness campaign. How do we determine that our children are ready? And then with that, what are we doing to support them to be ready? One of the biggest areas of support has been that we actually have an early learning district advisory committee, and that it's a wonderful committee, again, of volunteers who are giving their time simply because they want to make the most out of early learning for children. And then we most recently have really taken to heart the early learning team with our staff members. And so each of those things will be discussed as we move through this evening. I want to really take a moment to thank you. The Santa Monica Malibu commitment to early learning is quite frankly a little unparalleled. We know that we have many areas of need in districts, and we could choose to put our money and our efforts wherever we think is most important. And as demonstrated by the work that you have done with actually calling out in our LCFF with our LCAP that we actually have goals around early learning, you have demonstrated that commitment. And you have shown us that support by not only providing funding, but providing people support, those who can help us move ourselves in the right direction. And then, again, that forming, that really like working hard around what is the DAC supposed to do? How does that help us move ourselves forward? So this is one of the things that it's taken me quite some time to get to, and I'm still learning, but who are we? We are many. We are staff who support in the California State Preschool. We are staff who are in Head Start. We have Seaside Preschools. We have special education as a part of our community and work. And in that special education community, we have an opportunity where we have worked with our general education population and we have created collaborative classrooms so that children are growing together. We have part-day preschool, so children who come for a part of the school day. We have full-day preschool, which I always thought, okay, well, that was kind of the end of it. No, we have an extended day. So we have an opportunity, because we have many families who are working, who have a need. Children can be dropped off as early as 7:30 in the morning and can be picked up at 6 o'clock at night. That's called an extended day. We have transitional kindergarten and kindergarten. And I like to say, we're superhuman. little fun thing for me. But one of the most important things that I think we always need to reiterate is that we are not doing what we're doing out of thin air. We're not just making stuff up and saying, this feels like it should be working. We actually do our work grounded in the research that is available to us and the work that's been done by our colleagues. And so we want to make sure that we are continuing to consider our overarching principles, which actually are founded from the California Preschool Curriculum Framework. And if you go back and look, in addition to which, in the Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework, these principles are there. And it's a reminder, and we all know this, relationships are central to the work that we're doing. We grow as a result of the relationships we are in. And in each of these areas, we are growing. It's important for us to remember that in preschool, play is a way for learning. It is actually a key and integral way for learning, and that is integrated throughout. But in that play, you'll find intentional teaching experiences. You'll find the teachers as facilitators asking questions, directing different formats, and using that time of play to help children learn. We also know that there is no way children could learn without family and community partnerships, that those create the very fabric of the work that our children need to support their growth. We also realize, as we do at every level, that individualizing work is important for children. And so we do that as we work in our school day with one another. We are intentional in our responsiveness to all cultures, and we believe that every child comes with his or her own special strengths. And it is important that we reflect on our role as teachers in those classroom environments with our children. In addition to which, you most recently adopted our social justice standards, which we're excited, and we'd like to say, thanks for coming on board. It's nice of you to join us in early learning, because what we do in early learning is actually exactly this. We work with each child to help them learn about their identity, to help them develop who they are as people, and to help them understand that there are differences and similarities in everyone around them, and to appreciate them. And when they're not sure about those differences, to ask reflective and respectful questions, and then to be listeners and learners. You'll hear that all day long in our early learning classrooms. And so I actually took a quick moment to kind of try to do a brief crosswalk. And so I pulled out one of the anchor standards in diversity. And that was that students will develop language and knowledge to accurately and respectfully describe how people are both similar to and different from each other. And then if you look down, the desired results developmental profile, which is something our early learning teachers do in preschool and in transitional kindergarten 3 times a year, is actually taking in evidence, doing observations, making recordings. This is there for this particular standard, it's the social emotional understanding. The child shows developing understanding of people's behaviors, feelings, thoughts, and individual characteristics. And you can see that in each of these, there is a commonality. And so it's exciting for us to know that as you work to develop what it is we want all of our children to be doing, we're doing the very same thing in early learning. I would say every day, but it's more like every minute. I'm excited that we have a pathway we're working towards. We are really trying to make sure that our work together is not just talking to, but with. So our preschool, our transitional kindergarten, and our kindergarten teachers, it is our goal that we are a community of learners together where we learn from and share with one another. Because in doing that, we are not recreating a wheel. We are, in fact, creating an entire movement for children. They have opportunities for success far greater, because we know putting more heads together is far better than just one by itself. So our pathway is going to be that. We are going to be that early learning pathway where we are all working together. And we are supported by, as you can see, our early learning team, who are our staff members, as well as our early learning district advisory committee, who gives us that support. And you all just recently approved, well, it feels like it was just recently, our DAC charges. So you know them, so I won't speak to them at length, but you know that part of what we're trying to do is really consider if there are preschool eligible students in the community we're not yet serving, and if we're not, why not? What are the impediments, and are there resources we should be accessing? And then the second one is, what are the data points that we're trying to consider in terms of early learning at the preschool years, at the transitional kindergarten years, in the kindergarten years? What are the data we're using? Why are we using that data? And what can we pull from it to then have conversations about to move ourselves forward? So Rather than taking an easy road, the DAC really decided to take meaty, thoughtful ideas and know that this isn't going to be something that will be handled in 10 months. This isn't that kind of work, but rather the conversations to help move the supporting work of the district forward. And I'm excited. We've really worked on flourishing with our early learning team. So this is a team, a volunteer team of teachers and staff members who have come together, who really wanted to think about how is it that we can have those crosswalk conversations? How is it that we can vertically align ourselves? So you can see that we have our assistant director in child development services, our early learning coach, Allison Krogman, who's here tonight, a special education coordinator, Dr. Vegas, is on this team. We have preschool teachers, many of whom are here this evening, transitional kindergarten teachers, many of whom are here this evening, and kindergarten teachers who are a part of this conversation, and we are trying to work together to learn from each other. And I'm excited their energy is an amazing set of energy. The thoughtful questions that they have, the way we're trying to move ourselves forward, they are the reason we're doing this. So we have goals, and they're also weighty goals, but they're things that will take us far into the future. And that is, we want to continue our conversations at each of our levels, but now we'd really like to have them vertically aligned. We'd like to have those conversations from preschool up through kindergarten and back. And so what can that look like? Well, we're going to talk about what that can look like in just a little bit. But this is a team who's saying, like, what are the things we should be asking each other? Those assessment discussions, what's valid, what's important, what's useful, why are we doing it? And because those are the questions that we ask every day in our classrooms. Why would I do this? To what end? So these are the questions we want to ask as a holistic group. And then also, we would just like to further develop our vision. We each have a vision, but putting ourselves together in a community, what's our collective vision for our early learning pathway? What do we believe is essential for the foundational learning for children? This is a graphic you saw actually quite some time ago as you were starting to do this work with our early learning team. And it's important for us to put this back up here because the primary component for us is that we are SMM-USD aligned. We are district programs. We believe in the work of our district. We want our children who are in our preschools to move on through our schools. We are aligned as a district. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the work that supports that learning. So we are STEAM enhanced, and you're going to learn about that work in just a few moments in an exciting way of the things that we've done with the STEAM components. And that is that learning is integrated. We want to make sure that that's there. That we are Reggio inspired, and I call this out on a regular basis. This could be a hot button term because there are many thoughts about Reggio and Reggio inspired. And so, but what we want to go back to is having those conversations about why did we say this? And that is because we believe that play is a primary context for learning. That is because we believe, as we do inquiry-based learning experiences when we go through our older years, this is a way for us to start those experiential learning moments. And in doing that, we help our children be ready for the future in school. And that we always have a balanced approach to our learning components. With these components of intentional teaching, facilitated conversations, free opportunities, what are all of those looking like together so that we are helping the whole child move through learning experiences to help them into that next level. What's been exciting is all of the community connections that have developed as a result of how you've said this is important, people have agreed. We've had opportunities to work with people beyond just Santa Monica, Malibu. And so we're going to speak in just a moment about it was RGK, it's now the RESA Foundation, on the STEAM grant that was awarded to us 2 years ago. And then I'll speak briefly about our new work with the Providence St. John's Family Child Development Center with the Robert Wood Johnson Clinical Scholars Program, which is a nationally recognized program and quite difficult to achieve, and we were awarded this grant with Providence St. John's. And then finally, another grant that we've just received to do with Connections for Children and the City of Santa Monica, what they're calling the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment, but it's what we've just been talking about, vertical alignment conversations. So I wonder if Allison would I would like to call up Allison Krogman, who is our phenomenal early learning coach, and she's just going to share briefly about the RESA Foundation grant, STEAM grant that we received, and also what's been able to take as a result of it. I learn from her every day, and her energy and her commitment has been amazing, and it's a privilege to ask her to come up and work with you.
Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about, thank you. about some of the things that have come about through this amazing grant. We had 5 main goals that we were trying to reach through this support of our grant. And I'm going to focus in giving you just a quick example, focusing on goal 2, which is providing professional development to our teachers and to our staff. We have been able to provide, especially our Seaside and Bridges teachers, with really rich opportunities for professional development. That includes coaching, support in the classroom, developing learning experiences and lessons. We've been able to provide them with very high quality instructional materials. We've been able to provide classroom visits to community preschools and bring in external corporations to provide professional development. But what we realized is that we were forgetting about our other preschool teachers, and they're equally important because they are also serving our students. And so we put together a little PD for them around the use of ramps. We were able to give them a little overview of how to use materials. We provided them with the materials, and we gave them samples of lesson plans and what we call provocations. And provocations are invitations to learn, invitations to explore. And we asked our teachers to go back and just try, be open, try, and bring us back feedback. And they did that recently. And what we found is that not only were they successful, but they wanted more. And so part of our work together will be to move away from me just providing opportunities or lesson plans and ideas for activities, but to really call on our teachers' expertise, because as we know, they are the ones that know the most about early childhood and how children learn and how to engage them actively in their learning. And so moving forward, a goal for us is to create additional provocations and lessons that align to our early learning STEAM standards with our teachers. And then another thing I just wanted to touch upon is the conversations that have been able to occur because of coaching, the coaching model. I'm going to give one example at one specific school site where we took our pathway, our preschool TK kinder pathway, and we gathered our teachers together. And we started with a conversation around our philosophies. What do we believe about young children? What do we believe that they're capable of? What is our philosophy on how they learn and how we should teach them? And then we had a separate conversation about what instructional practices are in fact occurring in our classroom right now at each level. And what we found was that there was a little bit of a disconnect between what we believe and what was actually occurring in our classrooms. And so currently we're in the process of putting together a system or a way to get our teachers to be able to visit one another's classrooms. And the ultimate goal is that they will observe the things that are working really well and talk to each other about those things that align to our philosophies that we believe in. And then to challenge some of the practices that are occurring that don't align with our philosophies. And the reason that this is important is that we hope we create a seamless, soft transition from preschool to TK to kindergarten. As it exists now, there's a little bit of a wake-up call that our little 4, 5, and 6-year-olds experience between those grade levels. And so we hope that this work, engaging in this work and being able to have these teachers engaging in these conversations together, these difficult conversations together, challenging their current practices and their current views, that we will create those really gentle transitions for our students that will have long-lasting impacts. Thank you.
So this is the part I'm most excited about, and they're a little bit nervous about coming up. But I'm like, they're in front of people who are far more difficult and challenging each moment of each day. So show that to them. I want to welcome some of our teachers up to share with you some components of the learning that they've had as a result of the work that they've been doing. So I'd first like to ask Patty Romo to come up. She is at Edison in one of our Seaside preschools, and she is being supported by her colleague Flavia, who I could call up to come join. I'm not going to put Flavia on the spot. She's being supported by her colleague Flavia, who's also with her at Edison. And I want to thank Patty. She's going to share with you some information about some of the learning that they've been doing.
Good evening. My name is Patty Romo, and I'm a teacher at Edison. I'm saying a teacher because we co-teach the classroom, the preschool class at Edison.
My name is Flavia Reed. I've been working for the school district for approximately 12 years, and I've been working with Patty for 2, and in a dual immersion program at Edison. And it's quite an awesome experience.
So we were asked to talk a little bit about the social emotional component and the study that carried on this year. So one of the things in Seaside that we valued is the child-centered constructivist learning. And by this, a lot of the studies arise organically and based on the children's interest, their wondering, their inquiry, their needs. And then as teachers, we get this wondering, this interest, and then we facilitate them to get to this understanding, this knowledge. And how do we do that? We do that by, as Allison was saying, setting up provocations, opportunities for exploring, and hands-on, we also like to call it mess about with materials, and they are the ones that are constructing their own learning and understanding. And one of the, briefly an example that we had this year, and we were asked to give a brief example, was it began this year, and I want to say we went with it through like maybe 3 months, and it did go. The children were interested. The children were talking about it. And the great thing is that we know that they're interested when the parents are saying that they are learning from their children, and they're coming back with positive feedback. So it started by a child coming to the classroom and donated a book. It's Language Academy, so it's El Monstruo de Colores, The Color Monster, and it's a social emotional book. So we read it, and we found out that the children were amazed. They loved it. And we looked and we're like, and it's all about social emotional. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book, but it talks about, you see the green monster right there? It symbolizes calmness, calma. And all the colors, yellow is happiness, and blue is sad, and here I am doing all the emotions, angry, And so we just dove into that. They're interested. As Susan was saying early, social emotional is very important at all ages. And in preschool more so, because they're separating from parents, they're having anxiety and fears. And we've said, what better way than a book that interests them? And from there we had activities, and that's our other job. Like, okay, so now our classroom, the third teacher, what do we provide in our classroom to enhance that? So there's a whole center until the day it's still there, where the children go and put the color that represents how they're feeling. And it's okay to have the emotions all mixed up. And how do we organize those emotions? And then we started, we brought little marbles, different colors. They get to mix them and they get to organize them. By the time they're done, they are just, ready to talk about what their emotion. And then what strategy are we going to use to help them cope with that? And our director, our principal, Lori Oram, gave us a book, Mind Up, that we just went in and started reading, and then we started the science part of it. It's like, oh, the brain, how does that connect? And the children are going home and telling the parents about, Mommy, we got to use our prefrontal cortex. And the parents are like, what? The amygdala, how does that, is responsible for our feelings? And they're bringing that back. And it's amazing to see how, they're able to talk to emotions, but now they're teaching the parents and telling them, Mommy, take a deep breath. Let's get green, which is calm. So we were holding their interest, and they're learning through that. As if you see, they're learning their language, the language you get from there, the math when they're sorting and classifying, the science of the brain. I mean, every day we are in awe and amazed about, what the children are capable, and we're just there to facilitate. We'd never had read this book before, and it has taken us, until now that it rained, and since it never rains here, now they're interested in and that's what we're doing right now. But anything we'd like?
I think you covered it all.
I'm not good with adults. I like the little ones. Then thank you. We just want to thank you. We just and I don't know who you have next.
Thank you, Patty and Flavia. I know you want to come and ask more questions. I know you want to go visit their classrooms and learn more. I know you do. We'll be happy to have you. So, or you've been in their classrooms and learned. We also want to bring up, we Pachapur Norodom was supposed to be here this evening. She's one of our Head Start preschool teachers at Will Rogers, and she ended up at the last minute being unable to join us. But in a very loving way, her colleague, Nancy Murphy, who also works at Will Rogers, who's in one of the special education classrooms, in the preschool classrooms, volunteered to come join us last minute. So I'm going to ask Nancy to come up, if she doesn't mind. We're literally putting her on the spot this evening, and because that's what I do. And we just asked Nancy to share, if she wouldn't mind. You're going to see some pictures up here, and we actually have more to send you of the ramp work being done outside and videos of their work doing as well. But I just wanted her to share briefly, if she doesn't mind, that experience together.
So Susan had mentioned before, we had the opportunity to do one of the STEAM trainings with ramps this summer with TK, K teachers, Seaside teachers, and yay, special ed teachers too. Pachapur works next door to me in a Head Start classroom, and I run a special ed, special day class preschool. But we spend a lot of time together when we can, doing things, especially things like this that are very hands-on, that we've learned together in groups where the children play and explore these ramps. And what we find is really fun with our 3 to 5-year-olds and our special needs kiddos is they can really actively learn from each other even when they don't have a lot of language, be it because they are EL or because they have other language impairments. We can build and show what the next thing is and reason through some constructivism and some really preschool age physics with some of the new tools and new experiences that we learned during our STEAM training. Thank you.
Pretty good for on-the-spot moment asking, right? Thank you, Nancy. Next, I'm going to ask Liz Franchi to come up. She is one of our transitional kindergarten teachers from Roosevelt, and she's new to us this year and has been bold enough and brave enough and courageous enough to join us as well this evening, and she's going to share some of her experiences as well. Liz?
Hello, thank you for having us here. I'm Liz Franchi, and like she mentioned, I teach TK at Roosevelt. What I wanted to share with you tonight is a little bit about how I intentionally plan the environment, which then also plays into how I plan my direct instruction or my more explicit instruction. So I'd like to do that by just giving you an example of some of the investigations that we've done. In this beginning of the school year, we did a color investigation, so I started by thinking about what I could put out in my environment. So I put out primary color Play-Doh and water and shaving cream. You can imagine the mess that ensued, but it was lots of fun. And I started out by just wanting to know, what do they already know about color mixing and what kind of questions do they have? Not only did this kind of give me a baseline for who already knows that red and blue make purple, or who has no idea why those 3 colors are out there. But it also, later on, when we did the reading of Rabbit's Color Book or some more other books, I was able to pull on those experiences. I had a guaranteed background experience to say, Ruby, remember this morning when you had the red Play-Doh and the yellow Play-Doh? What happened? What do you think is going to happen now that the bunny has gone in the red paint and now he's going to go in the yellow paint? So what I like about this model is I get to create these background experiences that will support the learning that I want to do later. And so I can be intentional about putting out those materials. But also what's great about this is things always come up that I wasn't planning for. So when we had the conversation about, of course, a group of girls want to know, but how do we make pink? How do we make pink? None of these colors are making pink. And then we started talking about shade. And so the following day I said, all right, I need to add white and I need to add clear water and plain shaving cream. And so it created more vocabulary for us. Another unexpected part of the investigation was they realized that crayons don't mix as well. So they said, well, I'm putting the blue and I'm putting the yellow, but it's not really looking green. I can still see the blue and the yellow. So that made a whole nother conversation about art materials, about which materials are easier to mix and why not. So it's a continuation of their learning. So I get to start by thinking, like, what do I want to discover, what they know, and then from their own questions, recreate the environment for the following days. And this also works with the more academic subjects in math. So I just want to show you, before we even played any game with math, these Unisnap cubes were out and they got to explore them in the beginning of the school year, thinking, what can you do with them? How do they feel? And then during math, I taught them a game called Snap It. So they had 4, and their partner had to go behind their back and snap some, and they showed them what they had left, and they had to figure out magically what's behind that person's back. And so what they had to do was figure out a strategy. Okay, if you have 3, I have to count on, or some kids made a train in front of them and recreated it. So the following day, during that open flow time or the choice time, when the cubes were out on the table, kids who are really interested in math gravitated towards that and wanted to start playing with bigger numbers. Let's do it with 10, let's do it with 20, and we talked about how you needed different strategies. And then that gave me an opportunity to sit with those students who were really interested in that in a small group and show them, let me show you how this is 3 plus 1. Let's get the whiteboard and let me show you how you can record that. And then that kicked off the next day of our math work time, and then they got to show and invite more students how this game actually is connected to written numbers, to number sentences. So for me, what I'm learning this year is that there is no clear path. It's a relationship of what they do when it's open and how they interact with the environment to how I plan what I'm going to explicitly teach them. And I'm learning that I just have to be on my toes because I'm going to get a lot of questions, and I'm going to be doing a lot of planning that afternoon for the next day. So, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And I would now like to ask Patty Mehring, who is a transitional kindergarten teacher up at Cabrillo, to join us. And she's going to share a little bit more about the work that they have been doing up at Cabrillo this year. Patty, if you don't mind.
Hi. I am one of those former kindergarten teachers who used to fill out all the EDIs and attend all the RAND conferences. And I didn't think anybody was listening to what I said. And then I remember being at a table at a RAND conference where people were asking me questions as a kindergarten teacher, and I was stunned because I thought they're really listening. Something must be happening here. And I soon learned afterward that there were more than just the people at that table listening. There was a lot of people listening. And a couple of years later, when an opportunity came up at Juan Cabrillo for a transitional kindergarten teacher, I applied for it and got the position, but I still didn't really understand what was going on. And that led into a summer of amazing training in Reggio and some other things, and then a year of support and incredible materials and coaching. And the students that I had last year are now this year evenly split up between a kindergarten and a kindergarten first multi-age class, and I have had nothing but good reports from those teachers. And as far as the social and emotional, there's a few things that I really have learned from this. One is that environment is the third teacher, and if you set up the environment, when a child walks into the room, they can't go anywhere without learning something. It's impossible not to learn something in your room. And that the other thing is conversation, that kids need to be able to talk. Last year I had students that had 4 languages that were either first or second languages. There was Polish, German, French, and Lithuanian. And so there was a lot of opportunity for vocabulary. Like one day I heard at the Block Center 3 boys, and a conversation would be something like, "Can you pass me an arch?" And another one would say, "What's an arch?" "Well, this is an arch." "Oh, that's an arch." There's vocabulary. And this is what happens all day long without me force-feeding or planning. It's just natural and normal. Another example, I had 3 students that were would be considered at risk. One was a student that had temper and meltdowns and a lot of problem with even violent behavior. Another was one that was very withdrawn and antisocial. His parents were worried that he was on the spectrum. And another student who was a social outcast because of his severe speech impediment. And we worked with each of these students, were able to give them the time that they needed and deserved because we didn't have the academic pressures. We could really focus on the social and emotional. All 3 of those students are doing very well this year in kindergarten. And I can't imagine, being a former kindergarten teacher, them having to deal with that as well as academics if they'd gone straight into kindergarten. So I'm so thankful, and so are their parents, for that opportunity they had last year. I'm also very grateful for some responsive classroom training that I received last summer. Due to the district, we had a 4-day training the first week of summer, and it was probably some of the best training that I've received in many, many years. And it was so wonderful that I told my principal about it. She then passed it on to the leadership team, and currently our staff is going through the responsive classroom training as a complete staff. And what that ensures is that the social and emotional learning that we are focusing on in TK and preschool will not be halted. It will now carry through to 5th grade, because it will take some form in every grade level, probably in the form of class meetings and children having more choice, and it's not something that's just going to be stopping in kindergarten. Let's see. Oh, one other thing is I'm kind of in a sandwich. We're on a wing where the kindergarten is on this side, I'm in the middle, and now this year we started a preschool collaboration program that's preschool and special needs. And it is really an amazing program. In all my years of teaching, I can't recall anything that is working out so tremendously. And just a couple of examples of that. We have a yard where we are able to, with our aides, provide our teachers to be able to talk to one another about students. And we have a very experienced special needs teacher on hand, and I asked her in the beginning of the year to take a look at one of my students. And she said, "Oh, you don't have to worry about that one, but that one over there, you should take a look at." And so that has been a focus for me, and it's been really helpful. Now, at this time of year when we're getting ready for kindergarten roundup, we are talking about next year and where children are going to be placed. So we've worked out a way so that teachers can talk to teachers and other teachers and say, okay, well, this child needs these services, so be ready for that. This child would be suited for this. This child might do better in a K-1. So this is all so beneficial and provides the seamless transitions that we are all really focusing on, and our goals are towards. So I want to thank you for listening and for funding this, and I want to extend an open invitation to all of you to come to my classroom if you're ever in the neighborhood and see firsthand this wonderful program.
Thank you, Patty. I want to thank all of our teachers, and I know if you have questions for them, they're happy to answer them as well, and I'll try and keep the final part of this as brief as possible. But there are other outcroppings that have occurred as a result of the work that you have helped us to do. And that is that this past year, Providence St. John's with Santa Monica Malibu applied for the Robert Wood Johnson Clinical Scholars Program. And this national program is very, very difficult to apply for and to receive. And everyone who has been a part of this process has said every step along the way, they were like, huh, we moved forward. We moved forward. And then it turned out we received the grant. The great thing about this grant is it mimics part of what actually Head Start has done, and that is to try and provide holistic services for all children. The fabulous part about it is what we're trying to do as an early learning team is grow together. So this is an opportunity for all of our preschool classrooms to have a mental health consultant in their classroom for 1 hour every week. And that's simply for the classroom. And then if there are needs that are arising from mental health work with children and their families, there is more time devoted so that they get what they need. Teachers have an opportunity to work with the mental health consultants to give their reflections on what's happening in the classroom, where their needs are, and then the mental health consultants have an opportunity to work with them to support them, but then also to support the children who are needing that additional level of support. We are excited because we're also going to have an opportunity to have an occupational therapist consultancy component where they weren't going to necessarily do any specific work with one child, but rather give suggestions and work ideas to the teachers so that the whole classroom is benefiting from that learning experience. We'll have a nutritional consultation classrooms. And again, the great part about this is that it's being offered for every preschool that we have in our school districts. We're excited about this. And then finally, we're excited about the kindergarten readiness assessment with thanks to the work we're doing with Connections for Children and the City of Santa Monica. First 5 LA has awarded us a grant for the next 2 years to do exactly what we've been asking to do, which is those vertical alignment conversations, so that we'll have an opportunity to take our preschool, TK, and kindergarten teachers and to look at data that we have collected, not to ask them to do more data collection, but rather the data we've collected and to see what is useful, what is helpful, what are trends that we're finding, and in those trends that we're finding, are there things that we should be doing differently as educators to support our children? And so we are just in the beginning phases. Our goal is to start one of those sets of vertical conversations in the late spring this year, so that we're using data that we have right now and to do it again as the next year unfolds for us. And hopefully in future years, that is the routine. As Allison shared with you about the school site, they're getting that opportunity right now, but it's in one location. And we want this to be able to flourish throughout our entire school district. So I'm not going to go into the phases, so you don't need to worry about that. There are many next steps. We have lots of work that we're doing, and we have lots of work that we're hoping to continue to do. And we're excited about the work that's being done. We're excited to be learners together and to hope that in that work that we're doing, we get opportunities that we wouldn't have expected, kind of like what Liz was saying, those surprise opportunities that take place, and we want to take hold of them and learn and use them to fruition if you can. So we want to say thank you. We appreciate just how much commitment you have given to early learning and to the future work, to know that this is costly. We understand that this takes time, it takes people, it takes money, but the end result is that it won't later on, that in fact we'll have more successful students and then successful citizens who are community members who are actively supporting one another and the world around them. And so that's where we know this foundational work does that work. We start that. And so we thank you for that.
Thank you so much for that presentation. We'll have time now for some clarifying questions.
Thank you.
And then we also have 2 speakers. Clarifying questions? Go right to the speakers.
Great. The Board of Education will now hear comments from the public regarding this specific agenda item. As per the Brown Act, board members may not engage in discussion of issues raised during public comment except to ask clarifying questions, make a brief announcement, make a brief report on his or her own activities, or refer the matter to staff. Speakers will have 3 minutes. Speakers and members of the audience are asked to refrain from expressions of support or disagreement that would intimidate other speakers or disrupt this meeting. We have 2 speakers. I will call them both up. We have Ben Sweat and Yao Katagiri.
No intimidation, all right? Over the years, you know, I'm in the Early Childhood Task Force. We've come to you guys and said you have an opportunity and you have a responsibility. And I think today you got to see some of the opportunity that's happened. I mean, it's so exciting. It's almost a dream come true or a step toward it. I mean, first, there is a DAC, which is functional and worthwhile and helpful. This is a huge new thing, and it's fantastic. This area is being handled professionally, and it's exciting, and it's moving ahead. And I think you guys can not only dig into the facts of that, but also the feeling of it. You know, the great teachers. I think Susan is a great hire and is really making things happen, and it's wonderful having Jackie on board. And you'll notice that a lot of the stuff that she's presenting are things where resources are coming outside of the district, right? This is Robert Wood Johnson, et cetera. So this is money and energy coming in to sort of join you guys in doing the right thing. So I really just want to say thank you and keep up the good work, because by investing in these kids in your program, you're doing the smart, I mean, it's like she said, you're doing the smart long-term thing. It's going to benefit their future teachers, their future teachers, their future classmates, and their community. So it's not always going to be easy to keep supporting it, but keep it up. Good job. Don't stop.
Good evening. My name is Yao Katagiri. I'm co-chair of the Santa Monica Early Childhood Task Force. I'm here just to join my colleague Ben Sweat from the task force and my fellow co-chair, Leila Taslimi, who is here, to thank you very much as the leaders of the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District. What you heard tonight is evidence that we have a strong strategic direction in early learning, that we are making incredible progress along that strategic direction. The task force has worked with the district and its personnel in this field for 30 years. And sometimes we've worked closely with the school district, and other times it hasn't been as close. But I will tell you that we are filled with optimism at this moment because of the progress that we see, because of the sensibility of the programs that you are initiating, and the fact that you as leaders have embraced the role that the public school district has in early learning. You hear a lot about private preschool providers, early childhood providers, and so forth. But the fact remains that the school district is the largest purveyor of early childhood, early learning in the community, by far the largest single purveyor. And so you naturally, because of the numbers, have a totally leadership role in this field. And boy, are you stepping up. And we want to say we're filled with admiration and gratitude to the district for stepping forward. We welcome Dr. Mora to the family and look forward to working with her. And as you saw just now, we're so thrilled to have Susan Samardzich Powell and her whole team working with us in this regard. As she said, it's communication and relationships. That's how you get progress in a community. And we've got that in her. And I will tell you that when you selected her, what was it, 9 months ago, 8 months ago, there were some people in the early learning field who said, gee, we're a little disappointed that we don't have somebody who comes out of the early learning field to take over this important position in the district. And I will tell you that you don't often hear people publicly step up and say, hey, wrong call, I was wrong. And I've heard that time and time again over the last several months. You know about that, Susan? I was wrong. She's fabulous. She's a quick learner, and her enthusiasm, her professionalism, and her ability to inspire her team inspires the rest of us. So thank you very much, and we're really looking forward to the next several years. So thanks.
Thank you to both of our public speakers. Thank you very much. Members of the board, I just want to let everybody know that we allocated 40 minutes for this study session, and we're at 45 minutes, so I do ask that the board members be brief in their comments. And I have Ralph, Lori, and then Maria. And Craig.
Thank you. Thank you all for your patience this evening, and obviously how excited you were to be here. And we're excited. I mean, I know I speak for the board that we're so proud of the work that you're doing, and at the district for moving forward here, knowing the importance of preschool for all kids. And so we're doing great. And I don't know, Yao may can speak to this as well, because you talk a couple times about all children who are not in our schools, and creating sort of a metric or that would be used for assessment for all preschools, some of which again are not ours. And so I'm just, how's that going to work? And I don't know if the Early Childhood Task Force, because it's not, we can look at some stuff, but obviously it's a larger issue. It's a citywide, for both cities, it's a larger issue to make sure that, all kids have preschool, and that the preschools are, hopefully it's cross, the learning mode is similar in the preparation, so that when they do enter, kindergarten and first grade, particularly, that they're all in the environment that they're in, that they're all there and ready to step into that in an extremely positive way. So that's just a concern that all this great work, how do we spread it? And we can only do so much with our resources here. So I'm excited about and interested in how we work with the cities of Santa Monica and Malibu, and other agencies to provide great early childhood education for all children.
I think that, and it's certainly something that we can have further discussions about at a later point. I think that our main focus is we have children in our Santa Monica Malibu early learning pathway that we are working to support fully. And the great thing about the work that we're doing with our community members is that we have that kind of open communication forum where we are working together. We have worked really closely with the Growing Place and First Press, and we've had opportunities with the Brown Bag Directors Lunches where we have conversations about what's taking place in each of our locations. And really saying, because that's the one thing that I've come to learn so deeply about the early learning environment is that it's about the children. It's not about we have this and you have that, but it's about what are we providing for our children. And so the conversations have been occurring with both of the cities as well as, so what are the cities able to do that are supporting the work that we're doing as well as in other areas with the other providers as well. And so in particular with the EDI, that's actually information that's being utilized, we're utilizing it, and then we're actually taking them to community conversations. So what are the components that we're seeing and trend? Because again, we do have the largest amount of students who in both of the cities. So on trend, where are our students, where are we seeing those taking place? And so in those conversations, having them with the directors and their providers, what are the things that we would want them to be considering as they're going through their learning opportunities? And the nice thing that we have been offered by other providers and we are trying to do in return is those joint professional development opportunities. Actually, they've invited our staff to attend and we've invited their staff to attend whenever we've had PD opportunities, because it is at the end of the day about those experiences for the teachers learning so they can support the student learning.
The same special shout out to you, Susan, for stepping into this role and just jumping into it and being such a great leader you have been for so many years.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Thank you, Ralph. Member Lieberman.
I'm going to try not to be totally redundant because I was going to ask a similar question, and I will say that I think it's a little more down the road, though your answer to Ralph was a great one about what are we doing with respect to the private preschools, because as Eyal said, we are the largest purveyor, but there are a lot of kids who come to our schools from private preschools, and that will presumably continue because we couldn't even provide for all the kids out there who need preschools. So I do want us to work later on how do we ensure then that we have a way to communicate and collaborate with those preschools, which you just talked about, and to help ensure that what they're doing also leads to vertical alignment that you're talking about, having an easier, at least, path to, because our preschool teachers are ours. And that's not a question, that's just something for down the road. And then I just want to say that you're fabulous. I'm thrilled to be one of the liaisons to the task force. And I knew all along and said to people, Susan Samarch Powell was a great choice because I've seen her for many years as a teacher, then as assistant principal. And I'm not at all surprised. I'm thrilled that you're in this position and that you're helping us move what is a really key area forward. And I just want to mention one more thing, which is that this past Sunday, New York Times Magazine, it's the New York Times, the magazine that comes in the New York Times. I think the title is about preschool teachers' pay or something like that, but it's a very long article. It's called Why Are Our Most Important Teachers Paid the Least? But it's about that, but it's about much more than that. It's about the potential and for preschools and what we know now versus what people used to think about preschools. There's a lot in it. I recommend it to anybody. I'll send a link to the board. Okay, that's great. But I really highly recommend that because preschools are just key for us to focus on. And enough said, we're in good hands, and I think we're all really excited to work with all of you who are here. All the teachers' presentations were fabulous, and I think Craig said out loud, and I feel the same way, I wish I was in preschool.
Thank you, Lori. Ditto to that. Member Leon Vasquez.
Well, thank you. Uplifting, let me tell you, uplifting. But thank you so much, and I don't think we had any doubt because I, like Lori, saw you rise to the occasion all throughout the process here when you were, you know, from teacher to in the district offices, directors of whatever, the training for teachers, BITSA, to VP, to now principal of a school, and now to this. So I never did I doubt that you would have that energy and that passion, because you have the passion, and that's what I think. You can't beat anything but to have that passion to do the work that you do. But just to let you know that part of it, I raised this at our VAPA DAC meeting last night, because here we talk about including the arts into STEM, and for the first time we're seeing in yours, starting from the young ones, that you are including, and you're calling it STEAM. And for all of my visual art parents who are always complaining to me that, you know, we should be STEAM and not STEM, that now I'm hoping that and Dr. Mora was there last night, because we have to make sure we start making the changes. If our little ones start through the process, then we have to begin to change the view of how we teach STEM to be STEAM. So that was a real positive for them to hear, and my parents in the DAC, the VAPA, were excited about that. The other thing is I'm glad to hear that we're finally connecting up what I think, what we always talk about, the silos, that you're making those connections, the vertical articulation, everything you're talking about, with the private preschools to Head Start to Seaside to all the different components that make in the community. And I'm so excited to see that. You know, I got involved in the original, the DAC, back in 1988 and 89. When at that time I was looking, you know, my son was 3 and they had no preschools with Spanish-speaking staff. And I raised my child as a monolingual Spanish speaker, so it was difficult. I got involved with it. We finally brought, that's when originally in the 1990s we brought in the preschools into SMMUSD. And as a result, my nephew, my niece, and then my daughter eventually went through the preschools there at Will Rogers. And bilingual. So it was fantastic for us to finally get to that point, because that didn't exist. But it doesn't come short that when the community gets involved, especially in Santa Monica, and with the support of the city and all the different grants that they help also support, I mean, we're able to make those, you know, those connections and can start connecting the rings. And hopefully that will trickle up as, you know, you're talking about, you know, preschool, TK, and K, that eventually then it feeds into the, you know, the first to the primary grades and the elementaries, and then, you know, and to make sure that we all work collaboratively. But thank you so much. Thank you for your presentations, teachers. I was there at Edison the very first day of school, and then I got to see it last year when I guess it was back to school night, and I got to see some of the presentations, some of the work of the students for the 4-year-olds. So I'm excited. And my grandson's coming in the pipeline too in a couple of years. He's going to be 3 this year. So I'm waiting. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Member Foster and then Member King.
So that was inspirational. That was great. And it was great at 2 very different levels. One is, that was a really great presentation. And Ben, I would hold this up as a standard of what our presentation should be in the future. It was a great combination of informational and anecdotal in a way that went down smoothly, and yet gave us a ton of information and uplifted us. So that was fantastic as a structure. Oh, I could brag on you for hours. I'm just talking about the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
And so the structure was great. What's going on is great. And the thing I want to call out, and I'm not going to echo, I would say I echo all that's been said before, but the thing that was most impressive and also a key part of authentic expressions in the future, there's a joy that came through from absolutely every single person who spoke. I applaud all the teachers for their work and their joy in what they're doing, and I really do wish I was in each and every one of your classes. I wouldn't be a good student, but I'd be having a good time. So that's spectacular. So my hat is off to each and every one of you. This was just so encouraging for the future. Oh, and I want to say one other thing. I noticed if there were only sort of air tags to the things that were being presented, most, if not all, of the initiatives that we're trying to do K-12 are present in this presentation and in the work you're doing. Whether it's, you know, working with Realia, whether it's working social justice. I mean, it was like This was a tutorial in where we're all trying to go, so bravo.
Thank you, Member Foster. John.
This is Lori and I bragging because we get to sit on this DAC. Plus, it feels like America's Got Talent. You're going to the next level. All right, so this is my chance to brag on y'all. And it builds on what Craig just said. We are leading the way with our youngest learners, which is really exciting. We are doing all the things that we want to see K-12 with our young kids, and I think the reason why is there's a clear vision. You have a path towards executing that vision, and like you're saying, we need time, but we know where we're trying to get to. And I think that's a model that we need to see more in our K-12 and how we do it. And I think a great example of that is how you guys are incorporating data and assessment and how we're working with special ed and collaborating and innovating in those ways. I think it's a real model for what we're doing, and when we're clear with what we're trying to accomplish, then we know where we're trying to get to and how to get there. So I thought that was really wonderful. And again, Lori and I are taking just every ounce of credit that we can milk out of that presentation. Thank you very much, Sue, and your team.
A lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Keene. Oscar, would you like to say something? You don't have to, but if you'd like to.
I just want to say thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for all your work. My kids both went to the preschool programs here in our district, and my son showed me his first report card in elementary school, and all A's and 1B. You know, so he's thriving, and all of them, they love school because of the good start they received in our preschool programs here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, Dr. Samarj Pal, thank you, and thank you to all of the teachers who came. And again, we apologize for the delay in putting you up before, but the joy you exhibited was just absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. So, friend, that brings us now to communications, and I think we're going to start with Patrick. Welcome, Patrick, who is our representative from Santa Monica High School.
All right. Hello, everyone. It's pretty brief at the moment, but then now that we're back in the second semester, this is like the kickoff of all spring sports. So lacrosse is starting up, basketball is starting up for boys and girls both, and for lacrosse and everything. So people are, getting into the groove of second semester, and it's exciting, and people are going to sports games, so that's really fun. Our winter pep rally is tomorrow, so that's kind of like the big thing going on at the moment. And then our spirit week leading up to it, the theme is Survivor. So then we have like all kinds of like interesting spirit weeks, like tribal, like Into the Jungle with different themes and things like that. And then Apollo Night auditions are happening this week for our annual talent show. So yeah, it's just an exciting time of year. All right, that's it.
Thank you. Are there questions for Patrick? No? Thank you, Patrick. Thank you so much. And then tonight we welcome Isabella Rivas from Olympic High School. Welcome.
Hello, greetings and salutations. My assistant, Anthony Fuller, would like to pass out some pamphlets. And okay. Olympic students are about to complete their second trimester. In this next trimester, students will participate in the K9 Connection program and the Venice Arts Photography program and the Greg Koot Concert for the Arts. And finally, students recently took the second of 3 school-wide writing assessments. These assessments are used to target our 2 school-wide areas of focus, which is evidence-based writing and precise use of academic language. Teachers have noticed progress from students who don't engage to students who are now college-ready writing. And this simulates a placement exam essay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Isabel, and welcome to the dais. Now brings us to Sarah Braff and the CTA report, please.
Hello. So first I'd like to congratulate Dr. Drati on completing the team. It's been a long road to fill all of the enormous openings in major parts of our district, and that's a really hard thing to do. Both to fill it and also to keep the district going while it's being filled. So I want to say congratulations on that. I also want to thank Melody Kennedy for her report last last time from the budget, and we're very excited to see an updated version given the acceleration of the LCAP funding from Governor Brown. So we're hoping that that has a very positive effect on our budget. I also want to thank Dr. Drotti for going up and speaking with Malibu teachers yesterday and staff. It was a brave thing to do and a difficult thing to do. And I always appreciate it when people are willing to stand up under difficult circumstances, which you did in a fair and transparent way. So we're very happy that the testing is coming in the right direction and that we're ameliorating all these things in a safe way, but it's also very important that we understand what's going on and how to explain it to others. So I really appreciate that you were able to take the time and make it happen. So that was really great. I'm very happy about both our social justice planning and our independent PE planning going forward, and I'm really happy about the way that is progressing positively. And I do want to note one thing that you might have heard repeatedly from the preschool teachers is that they had common planning time. They had time to work together. They had time to listen to each other, to observe each other, and to go ahead and be able to discuss students together. I cannot tell you how important and how key that is, and we have to figure out a way to make that happen in our K-12 program, because especially with special ed, especially with collaboration, it is essential that teachers have common planning time, and if they don't, then it's a lack of commitment on our part, and we have to figure out a way to do that. So I know we're working positively in that direction, and I'm very pleased about that, but it's something we have to continue to work on because we're not there yet. Thank you.
Ms. Braff, thank you very much. That'll now bring us to the superintendent and his staff's report.
I'm going to go ahead and start.
Actually, I'm going to Dr.
okay.
Drotti. So as a new practice with the new president, if you will, I'm going to always turn to Dr. Drotti, and then he's going to tell us how the order is going to go with his staff. So we'll go to the superintendent.
Hello, testing, here you go. Well, I met with some wise people just to try to make sure that I'm always keeping you abreast of what's happening with the priorities that we set forward. As a matter of practice, not starting tonight, well, we are starting part of it tonight, which is what Mr. Tavildran Cheswin just said, that I will identify who will speak, but my cabinet and I are going to get together prior to every board meeting, at the cabinet meeting, and talk about the reports and how it aligns to the goals that we had established for the year. So that part won't happen tonight because we had this recent conversation, but I think that's a great way to keep us focused on the work. And as we're doing this very difficult lift, it's easy to get distracted and not keep focused on our work. Sometimes it appears that we're going to be distracted, but work is happening. So I think this is an opportunity to use that time to really give you feedback on where things are, where we're being successful, not successful, and just keep you up to date on things. So that'll be the change, not starting tonight, but the next time around when we do the superintendent's reports. With that said, I'll pass it on to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure to make some introductions tonight. And as Ms. Braff said, we've been able to welcome and have join our leadership team 3 new directors, and so we wanted the opportunity to introduce them to you and to introduce them to the public. And so I want to thank them for staying this long evening here, and that just shows their commitment to us in our district. And so I'm going to start with Mr. Gerardo Cruz, who is our new Director of Business and Fiscal Services. Mr. Cruz served most recently as Supervisor for Payroll and Benefits for the ABC Unified School District in Cerritos. Prior to that, he actually served here in SMMUSD for 4 years, lastly as a Fiscal Service Supervisor. Mr. Cruz holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Cal State Bakersfield and a Master's degree in Public Administration from Cal State Northridge. He has completed the School Business Management program at USC and is certified as a Chief Business Official from the California Association of School Business Officials. And so we're pleased to welcome Mr. Cruz. You'll have to decide if you want them to say anything. So let me introduce the other two. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Ana Shabria, who is our new Director of Purchasing. Ms. Shabria comes to SMMUSD with 20 years plus experience in purchasing administration, experience in budgets, project planning, and information technology. Her experience is with large complex systems and working with local, state, and federal agencies. Most recently, Ms. Shabria worked at USC, where she was involved in negotiating agreements, contract development, purchasing, and systems development. Ms. Shabria holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in business administration from Gujarat University in India. Did I get that right? Okay, thank you. And she also holds several certifications, including HIPAA, OSHA, and web-based multimedia and digital-based systems. So we welcome you, Ms. Shabria, to the school district. Okay. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Richard Marchini, who's our new Director of Food and Nutrition Services. Mr. Marchini brings 11 years of experience in food services to SMMUSD. He comes to the district having served most recently as the Director of Auxiliary Services for the Garvey Elementary School District in Rosemead. Prior to his time in Garvey, Mr. Marchini served in the School Food Services Manager for the New York City Department of Education. He has experience in menu development, implementing the National School Lunch Program and school breakfast programs. He holds a bachelor's degree in professional studies in hospitality management from the New York Institute of Technology and associate's degree in culinary arts. So welcome, Mr. Marchini. So I know that Ms. Kennedy is really pleased to have all three because she supervises all of them, and we're very pleased. They're days into their job, but they're certainly getting themselves out into our schools and our sites and really starting to form those relationships. And we're very pleased to have them here and welcome them. And thank you again for being here tonight, and we want to welcome you to the school district.
And Dr. Kelly, could we impose upon them just to say a word or two?
Sure, we want to give you an opportunity to make a comment or two.
I guess I'll go first. Don't jump too fast. Well, thanks so much, Superintendent Dr. Drotti, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Mora, and my boss, Melody Kennedy. I'm looking forward to returning. Just like I said in my little press release, it's a really nice homecoming to be able to come back and serve the community of Santa Monica, Malibu. I know Melody's going to depend on me a lot for all the technical pieces of our financial well-being, and I'm ready to do that. So if there's anything you ever need from Dr. Drotti or Melody that has to do with fiscal services, I'm sure they'll probably come from my desk, and I'm glad to do that for you. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, members of the board, and Dr. Drotti and Dr. Kelly and Melody. Thank you for the warm welcome, and Dr. Mora. I'm excited to be joining at a time with a whole new team, and we are all looking to make positive progress, and hopefully, like I said, I look forward to support the district with accountability, transparency, and leading towards excellence and trying to bridge the red that we have on our budget. Hopefully, very soon we should be managing our costs, and I'm hoping to bring together the various schools to do some combined purchasing and to standardize and look forward to some cost savings and make some creative changes to the way we procure and maintain our systems, and hopefully we'll all together as a team bring some positive energy back into staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Drotti, Cabinet, and Board for such a warm welcome. I look forward to serving the community in our schools. I've been out to a lot of them, and there's a lot of excitement and a lot of energy that I see within the staff of change that they see coming, and they're excited about the opportunity of change and the new things that we can bring to the schools and the cafeterias and to help grow the program in the community. And I look forward to helping usher that in. Thank you.
Thank you all, and we, again, appreciate you for being here and for your remarks. So thank you and congratulations.
So let me make a correction. I referred to Dr. Kelly as Mr. Kelly. It's actually Dr. Kelly. My apologies. And then Dr. Mora.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Drotti, cabinet, and guests. You know, for me, I'm really excited to be able to share the work that we're engaging in. This week, our team in Ed Services worked extensively with our Samuel High teachers, our English teachers, and our math teachers to facilitate the work around the development of the curriculum guides and also the development of their interim assessment. So that was really powerful work. They're going to be continuing the work because they needed a little bit more time, so they are going to be meeting in early February to continue that. But we're also going to be heading to Malibu High to engage in dialogue with our teachers there as well, because we know sometimes it could be challenging to have teachers come to Santa Monica, so we're going to them at Malibu High School so that we can engage in this dialogue as well. We also provided ELD training that was offered and hosted at Roosevelt Elementary School that targeted the development of academic language. And this was a training that was open to our 2nd through 8th grade teachers. And it really came about as a result of teacher need and desire to receive this additional support in the area of supporting not just our English learners, but also all students in developing academic language. We also this week met with our site leaders, and we actually engaged in a tuning protocol to begin the dialogue around our social justice framework and action plan. So part of that work is really engaging in a process with our leaders to get input and co-create, and that started on Tuesday. And then what we're going to be doing next is engaging our teacher leaders, our PD leaders, in a very similar process to gain their input and then make adjustments so that something that comes to you is really reflective of the collaborative efforts of site leaders, teacher leaders, and then also our district support staff. And then next week, we begin our 3rd round of SLT days. So our school leadership teams will be engaging in a full day of collaboration where they will be deepening and strengthening their SLT plans while looking at student work. And the intention is for them to be able to cross-collaborate so that they can share practices across their teams. So we're really looking forward to these opportunities and are excited for this work.
Mrs. Kennedy.
Good evening, board members, cabinet, and Dr. Drotti. Tonight, as you know, we've just announced our 3 new directors, and I'm very, very pleased to finally have the team in place. And although they just started, well, 2 of them just started last week, and then the other one started this week. We've already pretty much hit the ground running and taken a look at things. They're very much the professionals. They do know their business, and I'm very pleased with that. Anna has already identified about anywhere from 10 to 30% savings that we could possibly have on some expenses that we're doing in freight and what have you. She's like a little dog with a bone, and I'm enjoying it. Most definitely enjoying it. So I think that we've got a lot of great things coming in front of us, and I'm really appreciative. The same thing with Richard when he's out there looking at food services. He sat for 3 days with the interim and just was being poured, all the information was just being poured into his brain about all of the different nuances of our district and the food services pieces. And so he's already brought some changes to me in the last, his first week. And so I think that you're going to see some really exciting things out there. And then the same thing with Gerardo, with our finance director. We, right up until the moment, the reason I was so late trying to get into closed session, we were jamming on trying to understand some budget pieces and what have you, and he's reaching out to the right resources and everything. So I'm very, very proud of, to have this particular team at this point in time. Another member of our team that I'm very, very pleased to have is actually Carrie Upton at this point, our COO. Does a fabulous job of keeping things together. He's got a wonderful staff as well. And I just wanted to throw a kudos out there to him. Over the winter break, while many of us were home enjoying family and doing what have you, him and his staff were well, he was actually on vacation, but he did take care of things before he took off. But his staff was actually out there cleaning up after our fires and the things that happen with the smoke and the residue and everything. And so they were out there cleaning all of our school sites, cleaning tables and chairs and any kind of thing that had a surface to it. They were out there making sure that those pieces got cleaned up. And then I asked him, I said, can you put together a really quick list for me? And so he did. It's quite a lengthy list, but I won't spend too much time. So other things that were happening in the construction department, they completed dozens of projects, including at Cabrillo, Grant, Lincoln, Malibu, Roosevelt, Samo High, Will Rogers. 2 different things at Will Rogers and another one at Roosevelt. And that was basically replacing flooring and waterproofing, asphalt repairs, installing bleachers, and just numerous many different things that actually needs to get done. And those are their moments when they can actually do that, when we don't have the students there or what have you. So I'm really, really proud that folks came back. I actually toured with Carrie a little after, I think, the day we came back from break, and you could just see the work that's actually getting done out there. And so I'm very, very pleased with all of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Dr. Drotti or his staff? Seeing no questions, we'll move now to the consent agenda. Are there any members of the Board of Education who'd like to pull an item from the consent agenda?
I just have a question. 2 of the items are resolutions. Can they just stay as they are?
We're going to do a roll call on consent tonight, so that'll address that.
On the whole, okay.
So, Maria has left for the evening, yes? Yes, Oscar.
Yes, on, I think it's page 36. It's regarding the geotechnical observation and testing. With there's a part of it here that says Native American Monitoring Services for CEQA. And can you tell me just a little bit about what does that entail? What do we mean by that? I'm assuming that we're looking for artifacts or remains or anything like that, right? That's what it is? It's item number, I guess it's VILC 14, amendment number 15. It's on page 35.
So that's at Samo High, and it's in
it is at Samo High.
Right, and so it's a part of the greater Samo High campus plan. It's not specifically tied to the first project, the Discovery Building, Phase 1 and Phase 2, as we've previously called it. It's for future work, but what we're doing as part of the CEQA process for the overall project is doing on-site monitor. Well, eventually we'll do on-site monitoring if we have to. This is for them to go out. They're going to excavate. It's not a very big pit, but they're excavating a pit on campus, and they'll essentially sift through everything, make sure that we don't have any artifacts. We've gone to the extent of notifying the local tribes. There's a protocol, and we follow that protocol to notify them. So it is a part of that. It isn't that we have, I mean, we've heard anecdotally that there may be some artifacts there. We don't have any knowledge of that, but certainly we're looking for it if it's there.
Great. And there's no history of us finding anything recently, I mean, recent construction?
Certainly not in any recent projects, and I'm not aware of any beyond that.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing that there are no other items, thank you. Oscar de la Torre has moved the consent, seconded by member Lori Lieberman. And remember, this is a roll call because there are 2 different resolutions on consent. Mr. Metcher? Yes. Ms. Lieberman? Yes. Member Foster?
Yes.
Member de la Torre?
Yes.
Member Keene?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also, and there are 6 members of the board here, so that's a unanimous 6-0 vote. That'll take us now to our major items, major action items, and our first resolution, and we'll ask Vice President Keene to read the resolve, please.
Therefore, let it be resolved that the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District celebrates the life and legacy of a man who brought hope and healing to America. We commemorate the timeless values he taught us through his example, the values of courage, truth, justice, compassion, dignity, humility, and service, that so radiantly defined Dr. King's character and empowered his leadership. On this holiday, we commemorate the universal, unconditional love, forgiveness, and nonviolence that empowered his revolutionary spirit and speaks to the best of who we are as human beings. Be it further resolved that our schools, offices, and broader community become places that embody the spirit of this great American by promoting and embracing reconciliation, respect, brotherhood, and our common humanity, not just today, but every day of the year.
Thank you, John. Mr. Mitch, we need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mester. And seconded by Member Lieberman. And they'll take us to a vote. Ralph?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Oscar?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I'm a yes also. Thank you. I also want to point out that I brought a visual too for our resolution as I was thinking about the New Yorker this week. And it has Dr. King kneeling alongside with Colin Kaepernick and another,
Michael Bennett.
And Michael Bennett. So it's really, is that who it is? That's great, because you know the NFL better than I do. Dr. Drani probably does too. But so, the spirit, and I want to say that there was a wonderful piece that was in the New York Times where there was a boy, a fourth grader, who won the speech contest. Maybe some of you saw it at the Times, and he said, "I may not look like Dr. King, but I believe like Dr. King." And it was really incredible. So if you had an opportunity to check that out, it was very inspiring. And so, John, would you take us, please, to the next resolution as well?
Now therefore be it resolved that the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board of Education encourages all schools and teachers to observe the Fred T. Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution on January 30th of every year, or the days surrounding it, and conduct exercises commemorating the life of Fred Korematsu and recognizing the importance of preserving civil liberties even in times of real or perceived crisis.
Moved by Ralph, seconded by Lori. We're on a roll. Mr. Retcher?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. De La Torre?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
I'm a yes also. That's a unanimous decision. Is that our practice to read the other types? I don't think we did with the other resolutions. The next is the emergency resolution 1720, calling for full and fair funding of California's public schools. Yes, that we do read that. I jumped ahead. I was looking at the. I just skipped. Yeah, that's what I did. So Sarah, thank you. First we have to do the emergency resolution on the reduced days of operation of attendance. John, do you want to go to the?
Therefore, be it resolved by the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board of Education that SMM USD, a contractor with this, is this the correct one? Yes, the CDE, for state-funded child care and development programs should not be penalized for incurred program expenses, nor in subsequent annual budget allocations for either partial or complete program closures on December 5th through the 8th, 2017, as explained in detail above due to fires and the imminence of a major health or safety hazard as determined by the local health department or law enforcement agency. Be it further resolved that the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board of Education directs staff to forward this approved resolution to the appropriate field services office consultant in the Early Education and Support Division in the CDE.
Thank you, John. Moved by Ralph, seconded by Craig. Mr. Retcher?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
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 Yes, I didn't even call. That was good. So that's unanimous also. And then this will bring us now to the adoption of resolution number 1720. And I want to thank Member Foster and Member Leon Vasquez who brought this to our attention. I mean, many of us saw this, but this is on our agenda tonight because of their request.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District Board of Education urges the state legislature to fund California public schools at the national average or higher by the year 2020, and at a level that is equal to or above the average of the top 10 states nationally by 2025, and to maintain at a minimum this level of funding until otherwise decreed.
Craig, yes.
So this was an item at the CSBA conference, and they have a PowerPoint that they did that is unbelievably persuasive. I think our community is quite sophisticated and understands how badly underfunded all the schools in California are versus elsewhere in the country. But to say that it's true doesn't mean it's okay. And so what a lot of us in that meeting pushed CSBA and said, this needs to be your #1 item. You need to get that message out. You need to figure out why it is that we're so short funded, and you need to intervene in that so that schools in California can be funded within the top 10 of the nation, or whatever our goal is that isn't 45th out of 50. So this is really important. It is, on the one hand, tilting against the wind, but on the other hand, this is a really incredibly not okay thing that our state does to our children. And we should be committed to following this with the full amount of energy we have. One thing that we could do is take the CSBA presentation and run that at the PTA Council, run it for our business councils, run it, and make sure that this information gets out within our community. And it's not a long presentation, and it's really well crafted. So I would suggest, I don't know that it's appropriate to take time in a board meeting to do it, although it may be, but I think the kind of people who watch our board meeting already know it. But in a broader community, I think it would be really powerful, because it's truly appalling. I mean, we're $16 billion underfunded as a state. I mean, think about what we could do for our kids with $16 billion more.
Thank you, Craig. Can I consider that as a motion to approve the? Thank you. And seconded by Lori. Lori, did you also want to speak to the resolution?
No, I want to echo Craig's comments. I think we should look for the best forums to get that out. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Ralph?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Oscar?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes also. And I think that as the liaisons to PTA, John and I can maybe take this back and connect with Jen Smith. And I failed to mention that Jen did alert us that she would not be able to attend this evening. So, and I wanted to make sure that I conveyed her apologies, the president of the PTA. So forgive me for not having done that earlier. Dr. Drotti, that now brings us to the approval of the annual financial audit.
I have Mrs. Melody Kennedy do the honors.
Yes, I actually am going to introduce you to our auditor from Moss, Levy, and Hartz Schwim. And it is Hadley Hoey. Hadley, please, step forward. Hadley is going to go over the audit briefly. It's something that you actually had in your packet. He's going to take any questions that you have, even if it's a question regarding any of the conflict of interest information that we spoke about earlier this evening. So, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, good evening. My name is Hadley Hoy. I'm from Moss, Levy, and Hartsheim. I'm the audit partner of the 16-17 audit. This is our first year to perform the audit, and I just want to go over the audit report that we issue on page 89. So we issue 3 reports that we '89. Okay. All right.
89.
All right. So this is our summary of the auditor's result. So we issue 3 different reports that we render our opinion. So the first one is the financial statement audit. We issue a modified opinion, which means we believe the number present is fairly stated, and we believe there's no material misstatement on the district financial statement, the number. And the statement is present accordance to GAAP, General Accepted Accounting Principle, and it's it's a clean opinion as far as the like material concerned. This is the best opinion that auditee may receive from outside auditor. So we also issue a federal award compliance report. This year we audit Title I and Title II grants. And both grants, we also issue an unmodified opinion. And the last report that we render our opinion is the state award. We did some state compliance that required by CDE, and we also issue unmodified. We don't see any non-compliance on as far as the state program as well. On the last page, we have some recommendation. On page 92. There's no significant deficiency or material weaknesses that we note, but this is just additional recommendation that we feel like that can improve the overall operation. Is there any question?
In terms of the first recommendation that you make, you want us to evaluate projects on a comprehensive basis. And I understand why you want that to happen. But from my experience, anytime that there's a bid and a project, it always changes. You know?
I understand.
So I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to say is I guess to try to get, when you say comprehensive, you're trying to just, get it more detailed than what we're doing right now. Is that kind of what you recommend?
Correct. Because like when I first read the minutes and all that, like I see like there's a lot of change order. So I mean that's just one of my recommendation and concern. Yeah, like just want to make sure maybe when they first plan what they want to do as far as the project, just make sure like everything, like at least like most of the thing is included, so that there's no ongoing change order. Yeah.
We'll clarify and/or comment, and then we'll entertain a motion for approval.
Can I suggest we put that on the agenda for our facilities subcommittee, that point 1? I think that would be great to talk about.
Yeah, I think there have been little sort of allusions to that anyway recently there. I see nods from the facilities staff.
Thank you. And approval has been moved by Craig Foster. Is there a second? So I'm going to say Oscar because I heard Oscar first. Thank you. And so all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed are none, and abstentions. Thank you very much. And Mrs. Kennedy, thank you also. Thank you very much. And that now brings Measure ES expenditures from the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. Dr. Drotti?
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Your honor.
We actually don't have our representative with us tonight. We've been trying to connect with him all night, and we're not sure if something's happened or what have you. So I think we're going to have to table this one. It's not appropriate for me to actually give that to you.
Thank you very much. I entertain a motion to table the item. Moved by Craig, seconded by Lori. All those in favor of tabling the item? Aye. And I think parliamentary procedure, thank you, Oscar, requires us to have an actual date to table it. So let's table it to the next meeting unless otherwise noted by
February 1st.
All right.
Which is in Malibu, that's we might want to table it to.
Oh, it is Malibu.
That's okay. That is okay. There's nothing wrong. That is okay.
We'll put it for the 1st.
Charlie will make the trip. Charlie works for Santa Monica Malibu College Board. Thank you very much. So, Mrs. Kennedy, thank you very much for that. And Charlie's a great guy, so there's just been, I'm sure, miscommunication. Gentle people on the dais, I will direct your attention to the informational items before you. There are many of them there. Please take a peek.
Are there any board member comments or items? Then I'm going to go to continuation of comments, public comments.
Are you going to say that thing about the informational items? That we're now putting reports into informational sometimes when we don't feel that they're worthy of...
Well, I wouldn't say worthy. We're going to say what thank you. So certainly not worthy. But here's what we decided is that the expectation is that all members of the Board of Education will be thoroughly reading the reports that are on here as informational items, and then there's a determination as to whether or not there needs to have been a presentation or a study session on an item. But what we don't want to happen, thank you, Craig, is that these are just set aside and that we aren't paying attention to them. And as these come to us by way of our Friday memo, and also it's completely appropriate for members of the board to direct questions to the superintendent on these informational items. And as we discussed with the superintendent's report that we'll be seeing, those will be moments where he'll be able to address those questions as well pertaining to informational items. Are there board member, comments? Seeing no board member comments, we have one public speaker as a continuation of public comments.
Sure. We have one. I'm just going to introduce Berenice Onofre and say, Berenice, you have 3 minutes to address the board.
Welcome, Dr. Onofre.
Thank you. I actually wanted to hear the presentation first, but I guess I'm going to guess right now what I'm going to be talking about. But this is about item X1A, about the monitoring for the English Learner Program. I understand that the findings was something about the teacher certification. I don't have the exact number in my head, but it was over 20 teachers, I think, that were not certified. To me, it's a very serious issue. I have a concern. I don't know how you designate your items to fall under discussion or just information. I think to have this item and the information is a lot of wasting your time. We are already past the mid-January, and these English learners have not had appropriate teachers. I would have liked for it to be a discussion to know what are we doing, what are the schools doing, what is the administration doing, what's the district doing to recruit these teachers. This is serious in my point of view, and I feel very saddened that it's not a serious issue for the board because the English learners, as you know, are the least performers in our district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Onofre. Can we make sure that Dr. Onofre also gets a copy of the report that we have? It is attached. Okay. Just that would be great to make sure that that is the case. And so, friends, we do have to retire back to closed session. We do have remaining closed session items. However, before we make our way to closed session, I'd like to say that we will be adjourning the meeting in memory of one of our former employees and some and the victims of the deadly mudslide. And I'd like to read that now, noting that when we do adjourn, we'll be in closed session. So this evening's meeting will adjourn in memory of Guadalupe Saldivar, one of our cafeteria workers who passed away in mid-December. Ms. Saldivar was hired as a substitute child care assistant in our district in 1996. She was then hired as a cafeteria worker in 2005, where she started at Will Rogers Learning Community and then moved to Edison Language Academy. Guadalupe's colleagues described her as a lovely person and very dependable. A memorial service was held for her, for Guadalupe, just before the Christmas Day holiday, and our thoughts and prayers go out to all of her family. We also will be adjourning this evening in the memory of the victims of the deadly mudslides here in Southern California following the wildfires that burned in December. To this date, 20 people have lost their lives due to the mudslides, ranging in ages from 3 to 89. Santa Barbara County, specifically the neighborhood of Montecito, was hit the hardest, with waves of mudslides occurring in the early morning hours on Tuesday of last week while people slept in their homes. We know some of the victims were children, students of the schools in the area, and our thoughts are with those school communities as they grieve during this time. And we'll now make our way to closed session. Thank you to the public, and thank you.